Record, Mr. Clerk.
I have a quorum present, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Any items for the record?
I have nothing at this time, Mr. President.
Members will return to the agenda. We will go to General File Appropriations Bill, LB 698A. Senator Coltman.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Senator Williams. 698A is just it follows the bill that deals with continuous glucose monitors. As I believe, as we talked about when we introduced this bill, the fiscal note was pretty incorrect, and they've lowered it substantially. And I think it's still a little bit too high. This is a bill where if we monitor people's blood sugar levels on a regular basis, it protects a lot of the problems and keeps people from getting into the hospital. So I think that this will more than pay for itself, and I appreciate a green light on LB 698A. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Coltman. Debate is now open on LB 698A. Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I support this AM or LB 698 appropriations bill. I had one of the pages have passed out these yellow bracelets to you all. They were downstairs by near the information desk. There's the Kim Foundation has set up some materials, and I just wanted to share them all with you because they do a lot in behavioral health and suicide prevention. And they have a little thingy here that has a suicide prevention lifeline, 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255, the suicide prevention hotline. If you feel like you're alone, you're not, you're loved, you matter, and please call that hotline if you need to. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Seeing no one in the queue, Senator Coulterman waives closing on LB 698. Members, the question is the advancement of LB 698A to ENR initial. All those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have all voted? Record, Mr. Clerk.
34 ayes, no nays on the advancement of 698A.
The bill advances. Next item.
LB 804A by Senator Hughes that appropriates funds to implement 804.
Senator Hughes, you're recognized to open.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, colleagues. LB 804A is the A bill for 804, which we passed a week ago today, last Tuesday. It is a bill that increases the maximum allowable days for a member of the Nebraska Power Review Board designated to represent Nebraska on the Southwest Power Pools Regional State Committee so they can engage in activities on behalf of the state of Nebraska. LB 804A increases the per diems up to $15,000 per year from the Nebraska Power Review Fund to accommodate the additional days allowed in LB 804. This is a cash-funded agency, so they're wanting authority to spend their own money. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hughes. Debate is now open on LB 804A. Seeing no one in the queue, Senator Hughes, you're recognized to close. Senator Hughes waives closing. Members, the question is the advancement of LB 804A to ENR initial. All those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have all voted that wish? Record, Mr. Clerk.
36 ayes, no nays on the advancement of 804A.
The bill advances. Next item.
Mr. President, LB 1037A by Senator Arch. It's a bill for an act relating to appropriations that appropriates funds to carry out the provisions of LB 1037. I do have an amendment to the bill, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Senator Arch, you're recognized to open.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the 1037A, as the bill writers took a look at it, it actually doubled the cost. And so the amendment here strikes line 2 on page 2. It strikes one of those $400,000, insert 0. So the total A bill on this is for $400,000. Thank you.
Senator Arch, is that your opening then on the amendment? Thank you. Debate is now open on LB 1037 and Amendment 2193. Seeing no one wishing to speak, Senator Arch, you're recognized to close on AM 2193. Senator Arch waives closing. Members, the question is the attachment of AM 2193 to LB 1037. All those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have all voted? Record, Mr. Clerk.
40 yeas, no nays on the adoption of Senator Arch's amendment.
The amendment is adopted. Moving back to discussion. Seeing no one in the queue, Senator Arch, you're recognized to close on LB 1037. Senator Arch waives closing. Members, the question is the advancement of LB 1037A to ENR initial. All those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have all voted? Record, Mr. Clerk.
36 yeas, no nays, Mr. President, on the advancement of the bill.
The bill advances. Returning to the agenda, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, final reading. Senator McKinney, you had pending AM 2196. I understand you wish to, I'm sorry, you want to withdraw AM 2148.
Yes.
Mr. President, Senator McKinney would move to return the bill for specific amendment AM 2196.
Senator McKinney, you're recognized to open on your amendment.
AM, the amendment is just reflective of the, after Senator Geisa, LB 1215 was amended into 450, LB 450. So this new amendment just accounts for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator McKinney. Debate is now open on the amendment. Seeing no one in the queue, Senator McKinney. Senator McKinney, you're recognized to close on your amendment. Senator McKinney waives closing. Excuse me. Senator Erdman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wonder if Senator McKinney would yield to a question or two. Senator McKinney?
Yeah.
Senator McKinney, would you
Thank
yield?
you.
Yes.
Thank you, Senator McKinney. Senator McKinney, can you go into a little more detail about, you said this is Senator Geis' bill that's been amended into your bill?
Yes. So I've had an A bill that got passed, but we had moved a little too fast. And last week, Senator Geis' bill was amended onto my bill, and we're just fixing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Senator Erdman and Senator McKinney. Members, the question is returning the bill to select file for this amendment. All those in favor, vote aye. Those opposed, vote nay. Have all voted? Record, Mr. Clerk.
37 yeas, no nays to return the bill, Mr. President.
The bill is returned. Senator McKinney, you're now recognized to open on your amendment 2196.
Don't have too much more to say. The amendment just reflects the adoption of the LB 1215 into LB 450. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator McKinney. Debate is now open. Seeing no one wishing to debate, members, the question is the adoption of AM 2196. All those in favor, vote aye. Those opposed, vote nay. Have all voted that wish? Record, Mr. Clerk.
40 yeas, no nays on the adoption of the select file amendment.
The amendment is adopted. We're now on select file. Senator McKinney for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to advance LB 450A to ENR for engrossing.
Members, you've heard the amendment. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The bill is advanced. Mr. Clerk, for items.
I have nothing at this time, Mr. President.
Okay, returning to the agenda.
Mr. President, next bill, general file, LB 1112 by Senator McKinney. It's a bill for equity in schools. It adopts the Computer Science and Technology Act and provides a graduation requirement. It changes duties relating to the academic content standards. Introduced on January 19 of this year, at that time referred to the Education Committee. The bill is advanced to general file. There are committee amendments, Mr. President.
Senator McKinney, you're recognized to open on LB 1112.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon, colleagues. LB 1112 creates the Nebraska Computer Science and Technology Act. I'd like to thank Speaker Hildreth for choosing this as one of his speaker priorities for this session. LB 1112 was heard in the Education Committee on February 15th and was advanced on a 7-0 vote. During our hearing, our committee heard testimony from members of the business community, the Chamber of Commerce, companies like Huddle and Nelnet discuss workforce challenges and why increasing a student's exposure to computer science and technology can fill the gaps they are facing. We also heard from Metro Community College and Code.org about the resources available through both of their organizations to schools, teachers, and students to enact LB 1112, all available free of charge. Employers big and small support this bill, and it will help schools across the state prepare their students for the 21st century workforce. The proponents of LB 1112 talked about the challenges they face as employers because of the shortage in workforce for tech jobs. They also talk about the crisis employers are experiencing as they want to expand their footprint in our state, but have to look outside of the state because we don't have enough students with technology skills. LB 1112 can change that trajectory, and this bill will help ensure our students are prepared and educated in the skills needed to succeed in a career. Technology and computer science is no longer limited to just coding classes that only a small handful of students choose to take as an elective. Instead, technology and digital literacy is embedded in every industry our students choose to work in: manufacturing, agriculture, healthcare, and finance. LB 1112 is an opportunity to increase students' education in technology in states that have chosen to implement similar proposals. Their results, particularly for students of color and women, have been eye-opening. Nebraska should be a leader in educating our students, and if states like Arkansas could do it, I think we can too. Since the public hearing, my office has been working with members of the Nebraska Association of School Boards, including Miller Public Schools and Omaha Public Schools, to make changes to AM 1942, which have been reflected in AM 2101. I want to thank my co-sponsor, Senator Slama, for partnering with me again on this important proposal. You might remember that she and I worked last session on LB 450, the Financial Literacy Act, which was passed last year. Before I close, I would just kind of leave you guys with some words from late Omaha and Nebraska native Malcolm X. Education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator McKinney. As the clerk stated, there are amendments from the Education Committee. Senator Walls, as chair of the committee, you're recognized to open on the committee amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, colleagues. AM 1942 was introduced by the committee to accomplish two things. First, it ensures that new high school graduation requirement established by this bill, as well as the financial literacy bill last year, would only apply to students attending public schools. Second, it changes the requirement for the State Board of Education to adopt computer science and technology education standards so that such standards can be included under the mathematics, science, or career and technical education standards. This gives greater flexibility to school districts in meeting the new requirements, especially in Western Nebraska. I would like to thank Senator McKinney for working on this amendment and encourage your green vote to adopt AM 1942. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Walls. Mr. Clerk, there's an amendment to the committee amendment.
Senator McKinney would move to amend committee amendments with AM 2101.
Senator McKinney, you're recognized to open on AM 2101.
Thank you, Mr. President. AM 2101 addresses some more concerns from the education community. Starting it, grad requirements will now start with the class of 2027. It's important to keep the same timeline in terms of incorporating the standards in K through 12 education. This is a manageable timeline, and it gets this work going. Our students, however, make 4-year plans for graduation as 8th graders and have already registered for high schools. We tell them that they are responsible for the graduation requirements in the handbook in place when they register for freshman year. Changing the date to the graduating class of 2027 allows us to add it to the 2023-24 handbook this fall, which will be shared next year with 8th graders. Anything sooner disrupts the educational plan for students who are trying to fit in courses to make career academies and et cetera for their schedules. Equivalent of a semester also is in this amendment of a semester is in this, and this is proposed because every district, dang, I'm slipping my words, but every district has different criteria on what they consider a credit. Some for a semester course is 5 and some is 1. So the change in this is just saying the equivalent of a semester course. And that's about it for AM 2101.
Thank you, Senator McKinney. Debate is now open on LB 1112 and the amendments. Senator Arch, you're recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question for Senator McKinney, if he would yield.
Senator McKinney, would you yield?
Yes.
In larger school districts, smaller school districts, the implementation of this, and I haven't gone through the amendment to the bill, but are you concerned at all with some of the smaller school districts finding qualified people to teach these kinds of courses?
No, I'm not, because within the bill, you'll see that we allow for online education and blended learning opportunities. So I'm not overly concerned, and you also could take these courses offline. So when we worked on the bill and worked through the amendments, we tried to make sure it was as flexible as possible for a school in Omaha and a school in Scottsbluff.
Thank you. Thanks
No
for that
problem.
answer. The only other statement I would make is we do this occasionally where we will require certain, and we did this with financial literacy, and we've done this with other bills. I just say we have to be careful when we get into dictating this one's going to be 5 hours, this one's going to be 3 hours, and this is going to be 1 hour. And I mean, we're getting pretty deep into the schools, and so with that, I don't stand in opposition, but just a word of caution, and thank you for the answer to that specific question. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Arch and Senator McKinney. Senator Vargas, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. This is a good bill. I appreciate Senator McKinney and the other co-sponsors, and for a couple reasons. So one, and I've mentioned this maybe in my committee before, but I'm a former STEM science teacher, and I worked across the country with trying to make sure we're improving outcomes for kids in schools. And I will tell you, and you mentioned Arkansas, and this is some time ago, it wasn't even recently, Arkansas passed the computer science requirement. And the reason they did it is because they wanted to get ahead of the brain drain that we have, the gaps that we currently have, especially across low income and individuals of color within STEM careers. And we continue to see these gaps in computer science and technology related fields. And oftentimes by the time that they get to college and these different course requirements or courses are available, they had the opportunity to get some initial courses in high school. And if we gave them some initial coursework, both online or in person, I think we would have been able to fill some of these high demand, high tech jobs we currently have. We have 10,000 plus high tech jobs right now that are even unfilled across the state. And many of the people that came and testified on this bill are trying to get ahead of it reactively. We are behind the ball. I'm glad that this is moving forward. I'm glad that it was worked out with the 2027 start date. I would have wanted to do it a little sooner, but my hope is that negotiation, working with the School Boards Association and other entities, works, and that some take it on their own accord to then start to do it quicker, not later, because we really can't wait. We are competing with other states and other communities, and I just appreciate this bill, and I'm glad we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Vargas. Senator Blood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Fellow senators, friends all, At this moment, I don't stand in opposition or in support of the amendments or the underlying bill. And I did speak with Senator McKinney about this before the bill came up on the board. My concern, as much as Senator Arch's concern, is that ever since I've been here, we keep going into the weeds when it comes into curriculum, thinking that we know better than our school systems. And I think this is a very noble cause. I understand why there are so many supporters. We have a workforce shortage, and I'm a huge supporter of STEM. In fact, I put on my own Rosie Revere engineer programming in my district for grade school girls. But with that said, when we hand these unfunded mandates down, and we have the expectation that schools have to pay for this, they have to pay for that extra teacher, or I don't know if the courses, and maybe Senator McKinney can address this. I don't know if the courses are free to the schools that they can take. If they are, then I'm probably more of a proponent than an opponent. But if it's going to be a cost to the schools, this is one more things we're asking the schools to pay for. And since we don't fully fund our schools as many other states do, we're putting another unfunded or underfunded mandate on those schools. And so the concern for me isn't that the process of what you're trying to do, why I understand why it's important, and I am in full agreement with that part of the bill. The parts that I'm not in agreement with is what happens to a small school that's already having trouble retaining teachers, and you did kind of address that already, that they can do it online or offline, which is good since we know broadband is inconsistent across the state of Nebraska, which we still haven't fixed that problem either. But if it requires them having to hire a teacher, that's an expense. And then I look at our school systems in my district and Senator Arch's district, Papillion La Vista School District, Bellevue Public School District. We're already doing this. So I don't know if we need to do a carve out. I don't know if we need to find a way to fund this. Is there some way we can fund this without it being an unfunded mandate? Those are my concerns, and I'm hoping in between general and select we can address those concerns, or perhaps Senator McKinney has an answer to that right now, and I'd be happy to yield any of my extra time to Senator McKinney.
Senator McKinney, you're yielded 2 minutes, 30 seconds.
Sure, and just to reply to you, in my opening, I stated, and I'll say it again, districts can get this coursework free of charge. So it won't be difficult, and it's not a lot of districts are already doing this, but also they could get these courses for free through code.org and other entities in the state. So it wouldn't be a heavy lift on the districts. And I just want to say I brought this bill because, I always think about, what do we need to do to make sure that Nebraska is a vibrant state after I'm gone and after all of us are gone from this body. And I think this is something that could take our state to the future and prepare our students for the future, because the world is changing. Like, for example, the auto industry is going electric. And if our kids don't know how to use technology and things like that, that could be an issue. But that also means the workforce is going to change. And we have to make sure that our students are prepared for the workforce. If we wait later, we're going to be talking about issues about workforce and this, and that. But we can start working on that now. And that's what I hope you all understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator McKinney. And Senator Blood. Mr. Clerk, for announcement.
Mr. President, Health Committee will have an executive session underneath the south balcony, immediately south balcony, the Health Committee right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Senator Friesen, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've been watching as we keep, I guess, as a legislature addressing issues that K-12 should be teaching. And I am curious, I guess, where the Department of Education would be and where the Education Committee stands on this more. So if Senator Walz would yield to a question, please.
Senator Walz, would you yield?
Yes.
Senator Walz, is it typical for the legislature to have to adopt legislation to get different courses taught in K-12 schools, or what does the Department of Education, what role do they play?
I would say no, it's not typical, and that we would, if we could have conversations without having to have legislation, I think that would be.
So from your understanding, the Department of Education, if that was a if this was an issue that they would have looked at this or come up with a recommendation, and this is kind of part of their duties, or is it our duty?
I would say that, first of all, it's the Department of Education's duty.
Okay, thank you. Well, and I'm not saying that sometimes we don't need to address issues like this, but from what I've been hearing for the past 7 years that I've been here is that we still have some public schools that we would say are failing. And we keep adding more things to what they do. And in my area, they add these things without adding any extra funding. We're non-equalized. We don't get any state aid to help implement this. But yet we sometimes, the talk is that we're failing in teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic. We have not taught the basic skills of life to a graduate of a K through 12 student. They're unable to enter the workforce after K through 12 graduation because they fail in their either ability to read or to be able to just bounce a checkbook and live. And so we always expect kids to go on to community college or university or the college system of some sort. But at times it seems like we have started to pick and choose around what things we think as a legislature they should be teaching in the K through 12 system. And we have not addressed those costs. And Senator Blood, thank you for bringing that up. People always talk about unfunded mandates. This is one of those. Does it rise to the level that we as a legislature should make this a required course in K through 12? I'm not opposed to this idea. I appreciate Senator McKinney bringing this, but it's something I think we need to keep an eye on as a body when we go forward. If we keep mandating things and adding things to it, we don't understand course schedules. We don't understand how busy the day is in a student right now. To me, that's where the Department of Education would be doing a better job of trying to decide if this is one of those core courses that should be required in K through 12. And we as a body, we don't look at that issue. We just keep piling more things on, and they have to find a way to implement it into their schedule, hire the staff. Even if the courses are free, there's no such thing as a free lunch, I was always told. So I think we need to be cognizant of this and aware of it, and just kind of sometimes slow down and think about
1 minute.
What do we expect our K through 12 education to do, and what should they do real good at? And to me, it's preparing those kids for life after high school. And I think overall what I'm seeing in some areas is that they are not preparing those kids for that. And maybe our time should better be spent focusing on that. And I'm not saying that this isn't important, but I think overall we've seen too many cases where kids can't read. And that should be our priority when we talk about K through 12. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Friesen and Senator Walls. Senator Wayne, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sunday, I had the joy of flying down to Louisiana and attending a conference. In that conference, I heard state senators say they are actually introducing bills with a lot of support to actually go farther than what Senator McKinney is actually doing. What's going on across the country is that we're realizing that we are short programmers and coding significantly, particularly also here in Nebraska, but across the country. And states are now treating coding like a foreign language requirement, that there needs to be a year to 2 years of a foreign language requirement, and now coding is considered a foreign language. That's how we're trying to meet the demand. What I find interesting is many people who complain about all the money we spend in higher education to close the workforce gap. This bill right here starts earlier to make sure we can close the workforce gap in the #1 growing field in the country, which is the tech field. That's why this bill is important. I wish the bill went farther and treated it like a foreign language, but I understand that there's a lot of hesitancy of putting more and more on schools. But it is our job It is our job to make sure that we are preparing all kids for the next life, as you said, or after school, Senator Friesen said. Coding is a huge requirement for that. So I think we should all get on board with this to make sure that we are putting kids in a position to learn technology that they will have to use in the future. That's why this is so important. I do agree that arithmetic, writing, all that's very important. I don't think it's an either or. But I am saying that coding, at least what we're looking at, not just in North Omaha, but across the state, coding is needed everywhere. If you look at the farming industry that's transformed, I'm meeting with farmers who are talking about GPS, and I'm reading in Natural Resources about nitrate levels and how it's all being monitored through different programs and technology. That's all based off of code. And either we can get on board and make sure our students are knowing this stuff, or we can get left behind again. I looked at you, Senator Erdman. I was going to bring up veterinarian school, but with that, I'm not going to go there. I'll yield the rest of my time back to the chair.
Thank you, Senator Wayne. Senator Slama, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon, colleagues. I rise today in strong support of LB 1112 and the amendments that go along with it. To answer a question that was raised on the floor, the Department of Education does have a purview over this, but they've punted on the issue until at least 2026. So that is why I think Senator McKinney's LB 1112 is more than timely and is very fitting to bring before the legislature and put in statute. When we talk about the concept of who this bill serves, computer science, kids who have access are already getting the computer science education. We're talking about serving kids here who don't have access, who live in rural areas, who might only have access to slow internet at home, who might not have a computer in their home because their family's lower income. Computer science is a basic skill of life in this day and age, and we're setting our kids up to fail if we're not ensuring that every kid in a Nebraska public school has a chance to learn these skills. And in co-sponsoring this bill, and I'm a strong co-sponsor of this and proud to support the bill, the reception I received from the schools was that overwhelmingly they're already doing this. So when I look at LB 1112 and we're talking about unfunded mandates, first off, as we mentioned before on the floor, all of these materials are available for free online. And if the schools are already overwhelmingly doing this, I want to see the schools raise their hands and say, no, we're actually not teaching it. And here's why. Because you're setting those kids up, whether they're entering a field like engineering or even agriculture anymore, to fall behind their classmates and to be far more likely to fail. If we want a highly trained workforce that's grown right here in Nebraska, I can't think of a better bill for us in this body to support than LB 1112. And I'd like to yield the remainder of my time to Senator McKinney if he so chooses.
Senator McKinney, you're yielded 2 minutes, 56 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Slama. As I mentioned before, there are dozens of nonprofits in higher education institutions that have made professional development, curriculum, and courses available to school districts free of charge. Two of these entities, Metro Community College and Code.org, testified in support and have given us examples of resources they bring to the table without any cost to districts to access. We are not asking school districts to recreate the wheel. Dozens of courses are available online, and many Nebraskan high schools, 44% of them, are already offering computer science classes. Ensuring that all students are given the opportunity to learn foundational computer science or technology coursework is essential, and students in small schools shouldn't be left behind. Additionally, states are allowed to use the federal ESSER funds for professional development, which is another tool that districts could utilize to address workforce issues. Also, other states implementing the graduation requirements include Arkansas, South Carolina, and Nevada. Also, since Arkansas's computer science initiative was implemented, it increased the number of computer science courses enrollment by more than 800% since 2015. In 2014, 300 female students took computer science. Since then, there has been a 1,300% increase of women taking computer science classes, 700% increase of students of color, which started with 600 in 2014 and now are at 5,200 from 20 teachers in 2014 teacher computer science to over 600. This is a good bill for our state. This is
1
a
minute.
good bill to take our state into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator McKinney and Senator Slama. Senator Albright, you're recognized.
Thank you, President. Colleagues, I'd like to rise and just talk a little bit about what's in our Constitution and what our responsibility is on the floor of this legislature. Article 7 of the Constitution of the state of Nebraska says that the State Department of Education shall have general supervision and administration of the school system of the state and of such other activities as the legislature may direct. It also says that the duties and powers that the State Board of Education shall prescribe by the legislature, and that the Commissioner of Education shall have powers and duty as the legislature may direct. Clearly, in Nebraska, the State Board of Education and the Department of Education and the Commissioner of Education are all to be directed by the legislature. Senator McKinney, I applaud you for bringing this up. I looked over the committee minutes. The only one that was not interested in voting for it was the chair herself. So she looks like she's busy right now, but I'm going to continue on with the thought process here of we're talking in the state of Nebraska today that we are having trouble getting teachers, getting nurses. We're going to have shortages of a lot of different things. But I think what this body needs to do is to take a step back and find out what has happened, that if the children aren't reading before they leave third grade, it would be very difficult for them to take courses like this. If the children don't have an opportunity to know and understand like the field that they're going to go into, if they want to be an electrician, but we aren't preparing them in the years before they go to an apprenticeship, the basic math that you need to know. I mean, there are so many things that are happening in our state right now that we can be helping businesses. We can be helping people. If they just come to us with a large bill like this that can make a difference in the children's lives, but more importantly, the business leaders in our community need this. I look at this as something that I don't know that all schools can do this. I think that the teachers can learn how to administer and to teach the course. That shouldn't be a big deal, right? But maybe they teach this and they do away with something else that has nothing to do with their future. I mean, we're responsible for a well-rounded child to go out into the workforce and understand how to take care of their finances. They need to be able to read. They need creative thinking. But these are the things that we are responsible right here on this floor to make that happen. And again, when I look at the fact that I don't see any pushback from the actual committee statement does not say that all we see is a Bellevue school. I guess there is NASB and NRCSA that were opposed to this, but I would like to maybe find out why. I understand if certain schools might not be able to think they can do this, but I'm quite certain that it's probably been vetted out by Senator McKinney and all of the different groups that he had come in support of this. But I'm very curious to find out, is it just the mandate? Because I'm looking at it like this. On this floor, it is our responsibility to take care of these schools and take them to the next level so that we can have reading and arithmetic to be something second nature to a child. But we can't do that unless we all get together and understand that it is our responsibility to be directing them as to what our state needs are, because it's not happening right now. It's just the ability to do whatever they want to do when they want to do it. But I'm going to get back on the mic because I still have more questions for the chair of education. I'd like to know where she's at on this, why she was present not voting, because if it's a concern of the schools, then I would like to know what those concerns are. And again, I believe in local control. If If I'm up in the district of where the largest Tyson food plant is, and they come to our schools and say, you know, I need some children considering this for their future education, what do they need from the schools to help them bring people into that business and make it successful? I mean, we have a lot of different jobs up in our area, and the colleges are looking at it too. Whatever they can do for the businesses in our area, so that the children get the best education before they
Time,
even
Senator.
get. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Albright. Senator Hilgers, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, colleagues. I rise in support of LB 1112 and the underlying amendments. And I appreciate Senator McKinney's leadership on 1112, but also if you remember last year, another speaker priority brought by Senator McKinney was the financial literacy bill. And sometimes the bills that we introduce and get passed into law have immediate, concrete, tangible, positive impact. And then there's some bills, I think like 1112, that might take some time to have the impact that we all intend to have, but that they far outstrip a lot of the value in some of the other bills that we've gotten. I think this one, especially in conjunction with the financial literacy bill that Senator McKinney brought last year, are one of those. It's a kind of bill that we're going to look back, I think, in 10, 20, and 30 years, and I hope be most proud of, because I think it will have a transformational impact on the communities here in the state of Nebraska. I think Senator Wayne said it right. These are the types of skills, computer science, that we hear from businesses around the state, that people are clamoring for this type of background, experience, and talent. Our Nebraska businesses can grow with this type of talent and this type of training, and we don't have enough of them. But on the same token, and we talk about it a lot, how do we change the trajectory of a family or of a community or of an individual if you didn't grow up and become the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, or have the skills to be an entertainer or play basketball or be the head coach for the Nebraska Cornhuskers? The truth is, being able to have the skills to be an entrepreneur, to go make your own way. And if you want to do that in this economy, in the next 10, 20, 30 years, it's almost non-negotiable in a lot of ways to have this type of a background. And so I think both from the Nebraska growth perspective for the businesses we already have and that are going to come down the line, but at the same time for an individual perspective and the fourth grader or the third grader who in 10 or 20 years will use these skills to start their own business, I think will have an immense immeasurable positive impact on the state of Nebraska. And when you combine it with the financial literacy bill from last year, I think these two together will have a very important and positive effect. So I thank Senator McKinney for bringing it. I would urge you to vote green on the bill and the underlying amendments. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Speaker Hilgers. Senator Blood, you're recognized.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. President. Fellow senators, friends all, I am still not sure where I stand on either the amendments nor the underlying bill, but I would ask that Senator McKinney yield to a few questions. Hello?
Would you repeat that, Senator Blood?
Yes, I would ask that Senator McKinney please yield to some questions.
Senator McKinney, would you yield?
Yes.
Senator McKinney, so I understand and comprehend that the programming is free. So who oversees it? Are there teachers that have to be involved with that part of it? And if indeed it were a small school, is there a possibility that they would have to hire a teacher?
So the teachers would oversee it, but in the bill, you see that it's blended learning included in the bill. So the teachers could work it into what they're already teaching. So it isn't a burden to add another teacher.
So they wouldn't have to be qualified in any way as far as this subject in order to oversee it?
No, some teachers, and why we made the amendment is some teachers are already teaching computer and technology,
But some aren't.
education. Some aren't, and the reason for the amendment is to make it more flexible. So for those that are not, as you say, certified technically.
Okay, I'm not sure I have my question answered. So we know that there are teachers that are definitely teaching this, and that may also have the skills that aren't teaching it. And it's our assumption that the others will be able to catch up? Is that what you're saying, or?
I'm saying over time, potentially, yes, they'll catch up, but initially, the bill is worked in a way that allows for teachers that don't have those credentials to still teach the education and not force districts to just add other teachers.
So I think out loud, and that's why I like to have dialogues on the mic. How would you feel about, instead of K through 12, K through 14, we allowed students to have 2 years for free here in Nebraska of community college so they could actually learn these skills, get certified, because what we're talking about is so much more than coding. We talk a lot about coding, but that's just a small fraction of the jobs that are out there when it comes to technology. How would you feel about something like that, Senator McKinney?
The bill isn't just limited to coding. It's focused on all areas of technical computer technology education and digital literacy. And as far as upping it to 14, I'm open to everybody learning about it. Even, so that's not something I'm opposed to. Metro Community College, for example, offers free education and also, supports the bill as well.
Right. And so again, I'm not against anything that this bill does. I say it all the time, I'm against unfunded, underfunded mandates. The programming itself may be free, but it sounds like there's bodies that are involved that may actually result in cost. I mean, you can't deny that.
I mean, it's possible, yes, but I would just say, I don't look at it as an unfunded mandate or anything like that. I look at it as an investment from our state into our students to prepare them for the future. And I'm willing to throw any dollar on the line to make sure our students are prepared. So in 10 years, Huddle, Google, and the rest of those entities don't come to the body and say we got 10,000 jobs that we need filled, but we don't have the workforce.
And I don't disagree that we have to prep our workforce. We're in full agreement on that. But if we incur costs that are not in a school's budget, we ultimately are investing or not giving an unfunded or underfunded mandate. And until we fully fund our schools in Nebraska, that's always going to be an issue, Senator. But again, the underlying reasoning for this bill is something that I fully support. My issue again is making sure that we do it right. And for me, I'd rather see us do a K through 14 than we'd have highly qualified people who had their education paid for that could walk into the workforce. So that's something we can discuss next year, I guess.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Blood and Senator McKinney. Senator Friesen, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, I want to talk a little bit about the responsibility of the legislature or the State Board of Education. And I would wonder if Senator Wayne would yield to some questions.
Senator Wayne, would you yield?
Yes, to my good friend, Senator Friesen.
Senator Wayne, I've always enjoyed having a good discussion with you, and I know you've been on OPS Board of Education. You as a board member, could you have instigated this and got a course dealing with this as a school board member?
Yes, actually, 7 years ago, Senator Vargas and I started this coding conversation, and actually third graders and fourth graders started a semi-code class, and that's how they learn. And then from there, yes, we can initiate it at the local level.
Okay, so you're very familiar also with how the progress of different components that we've made in requiring an education to get a certificate in the state of Nebraska. What is the Department of Education's job in this whole picture?
So they set the accreditation and they set what the requirements are. And by making coding a requirement, it actually forces students to have to be exposed to that class. Where if it's just a volunteer, students don't know what they want to do, and they oftentimes aren't exposed to it. So like language arts, you have to take a foreign language, you have to take another foreign language, and then you find out you might like Latin or French. But it's because it's a requirement, it exposes students to it.
So they have the authority, though, then to make that decision and require it in every public school.
Yes, and I would tell you that the difference is, though, we have such a coding gap, it's time for the state to step up.
Okay, and so you're saying that the state operates at a faster speed than the Department of Education?
No, I'm saying that we dictate to the Department of Education what they can and can't do in statute, and statute's way more than regulations.
But they do have the authority to do this currently?
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Senator Wayne, I appreciate it. So I look at this and I do realize I think a lot of schools maybe started to do this already. And I will say I'm not opposed to the thought that we're doing this. But again, we don't understand school schedules. We don't understand how busy those students are in the day. And yet we continually, this isn't the only bill that we've had, that we keep dictating what they need to do to fulfill the requirements for graduation. And yet the Department of Education or the state board has been working on a lot of other things, but I think maybe their attention needs to be drawn to things that matter to students and their education. So maybe they've been a little bit distracted in the past, and maybe it's time that they focus on things maybe that our schools should be looking at. So when I talk about funding, I've noticed that I believe, and if I read this correctly, it only applies to public schools. And so I'm wondering why we don't require private schools to do the same thing, because those kids there, we sure don't want them left behind. And again, by doing this and saying only public schools need to do this, I'm curious as to why we did that. Maybe somebody can address that on the mic at some point in time. But again, we have 170 school districts in this state that don't receive funding. And when we pass mandates down like this, it's going to cost them more money. And property taxes are going to go up. And yet we continually sit here and say that schools are spending too much money. We need to put spending restraints on schools. We need to stop how much they're spending. They're increasing it too fast.
One
so
minute.
we refuse to give them more money. And at the same time, we make them do more. And so I am concerned about how we fund our K through 12 and how we lack funding in those non-equalized schools and how it's all paid for with property taxes. And this will end up costing schools more, and there will be a property tax increase. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Friesen. Senator Wayne. Senator Vargas, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. And Senator Friesen, appreciate the dialogue. And we talked a little bit off the mic about this, but I just wanted to add some data to this because I think it's important. We have a workforce issue across the country and in our state. And the workforce sometimes exists with making sure our existing workforce has the skills they need to be in the jobs that we currently have. That's one. But the second thing is making sure we're competitive in areas where people don't normally think that a state like Nebraska should be competitive. It's the reason why Arkansas, Mississippi, and other states have been doing something in this area. We still don't have even the direct funding we need to then even do better as a state in terms of CTE funding. That's something that we've been working on as a state. This is a step that we should have taken years ago that I think we should take. And I just want to give some statistics because I think it helps provide this. The U.S. is the most lucrative country for developer jobs in these last 2 years, where the average salary for a developer, a coder, is $95,879. With 44% of the developers earning nearly $100,000 or more, and 5% earning more than $200,000. There are really great jobs that exist right here because there are either tech companies or our financial industry that does exist, from Mutual of Omaha to Toast to Buildertrend to others, that have really good jobs here that they're just seeking out and recruiting outside of our state because we don't have enough of the skills. If we do provide the pathway earlier and make sure that the skills are there and we're requiring it, and again, this is in 2027 when it starts, we're still going to be behind the ball. If we do it, we're only going to be able to then create a pathway in high school where people think about the career in this trajectory. By the time they get to college, most students are thinking about their careers in a very, very honest sense. I bet you our pages right now pick their majors in their first couple of years, and if they didn't have some experience that they had in their high school, might have changed what they decided to do. Those first couple of years and the experiences they have and some of those coursework. And Senator Wayne and I, we worked on some of these issues at OPS. OPS worked on trying to provide some more coding academies and some more virtual school. Those options created pathways for kids that never thought in a million years that this would be a potential job career choice. That is an extremely beyond lucrative choice that they may not even have to go to college, and they may just be able to have a couple years of community college and get a certificate from an independent entity, and then could be doing really well for themselves. But if we don't reach them early enough, just in the same way we talk about trades, which I also want to support, this is a trade. So I hope we can support this, and I appreciate the amendments. I think it made it much more reasonable in terms of timeline. But we're behind the ball. People are looking at us, and I appreciate that. Well, this bill is going to be moving forward, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Vargas. Senator Albright, you're recognized.
Thank you again, President. And I rise to talk about the fiscal note. Quite frankly, I don't think there should be one. I can't imagine in our Department of Education that they wouldn't have one or two people that would be like absolutely qualified to write something like this. That they would have the education and the technology area. I can't imagine that we'd have to hire someone. So with that said, I really can't believe that we'd even have to have a fiscal note. We'll look at that at select. But I do have some questions as this bill was being brought forth, and it looks like there was only one gal that was in opposition to the whole idea of this. You know, I think of Sarpy County with the Facebook and, you know, the Googles and just all of the technological areas that we have to cover in this state. We've got a lot of work to do to get our kids up to speed, right? So I do have a question if Senator Walls would yield to a question or two.
Senator Walls, would you yield?
Yes. Hi, thank you. Can you tell me, have you heard any rumblings that this is not something that the schools would support?
The schools definitely want to make sure that they're exposing kids to computer and technology. So that, that's something they definitely want to do.
Okay, and so I know you were present, not voting. Can you tell me what your concerns were?
Sure. I was concerned because of the graduation requirement piece of it, and I talked to Senator McKinney right away. Growing up, I was really not a tech savvy. I'm more of an artsy type person. I'm not mathematical. I'm not scientific. So I was concerned that if we had a graduation requirement, that there were some kids that honestly wouldn't be able to meet that because that wasn't their forte. That was my concern.
So is that why it's just like a semester that people would have to take it? I mean, there were a few things that I probably wouldn't have enjoyed taking either, but this is just a semester, right? A semester that every child would have to take.
Yeah.
Right.
It was a separate 5-credit class, but since then it has it's woven into the other curriculum.
And do you think all schools throughout the whole state would be able to handle something like this? I'm talking from the smaller schools all the way up to the big metro schools.
I think the other thing is that, Senator McKinney, it doesn't go into effect right away. So it does give schools the ability to plan for it. And I think that was another really important part of the bill.
And only because you're in education, I'm asking these questions because it's not my area of expertise, but what type of a teacher would teach this? Would it be a math teacher? Would it be a science teacher? Would it be
It depends upon the grade level. I mean, if you're in elementary, I suppose it would be the classroom teacher that would be teaching that. And you could teach it in science, you could teach it in reading, you could teach it in math, the way that it's set up. And high school, it's going to be a science teacher, it's going to be a math teacher.
So you would think that this would be in K through 12. Every grade would have to experience?
Every grade experiences it in some way or another.
Okay. I appreciate those answers. Again, I rise in support of LB 1112 and the AMs that follow, 1942 and 2101. I just really am excited to see that we are moving in the direction to help in areas that our state needs to thrive. And we know our nurses, we know our farmers, we know the teachers that are going to go into that field. Everyone needs to wrap their head around the most important things that are happening, and technology is definitely on the forefront, and we are lagging behind, I feel. So again, I appreciate Senator McKinney bringing the bill, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Senator Albright and Senator Walls. Senator Erdman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, let me just say again, I appreciate when you're in the chair, I can hear you. Very nice. So as I listen to the discussion today, the thought comes to me, what is preventing the schools from doing this now? Why do we have to pass legislation to get the public schools, government schools, to teach what they need to teach? And besides that, this doesn't go into effect until 26 or 27. What do you do in the meantime? There are school districts that are already doing this. So if the State Board of Education thought this was important and preparing young people to be ready to go on with life when they graduate, they'd be doing these kind of things instead of having Senator McKinney bring a bill to teach them or tell them what they need to teach. So last week, we had people in the appropriations and they were talking about funding for dual courses. And there was a superintendent in, and the information he passed out said that 21% of high school graduates that take the ACT aren't prepared to go to college. So our school system is failing these young people from the time they start until they graduate from high school with a proper education so that they can pass the ACT. And then we have people who have gone to college to become a teacher and they can't pass the test to become a teacher because they don't have the skills that it takes to pass the test. So we're going to lower the test, lower the qualifications so they can pass. Instead of going back and looking and seeing what we've been doing in education so that they're not qualified. They're not able to do it. They don't have the skills. So the longer we talk about this bill, the more I'm concerned that this is something the schools could do. And we do not have to pass a statute to tell them to do that. That's their job. That's what education is supposed to be all about. Well, the problem is it's instruction and not education, because education is the requirement of the student. Instruction is what the school does. And so Senator Albright was exactly right. Out of the 512 employees they have at the Department of Education, you should be able to find one or two people that were able to do these qualifications or write this program up so that the schools could do it. That's a lot of people, 512. They have a large budget. And so now we're going to tell them this is what you need to do, and we have to have another full-time employee to be able to implement this program. So the longer we talk here today, the more I'm beginning to believe that this is something the schools could do, and we don't need to tell them how to do it. So we'll see what the rest of the discussion is, but the longer I hear this, the less enthused I am about 1112. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Erdman. Senator Bostelman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. While I don't disagree that STEM and computer technology and teaching should be applied at all levels of school. In fact, my grandsons in elementary school already have their device, their pad, the iPad, whatever it is that they use already to learn. A couple of comments I've made. That's what I wanted to speak to is about the cost. I had ESUs and superintendents come into my office, both with concerns on the bill, all stating that we're doing a lot of this already, all stating that this is going to cost us more money. We don't have the teachers to do this. I understand Senator McKinney says material is free, and I appreciate that, but that still takes a computer lab, that still takes a teacher, that still takes someone to sit there to oversee that instruction. I know when we've talked on distance learning with my schools, with superintendents for in schools, especially when our son was in school, when you start talking distance learning and that, you got to fit it into their curriculum, into their schedules. And every school district, every school has a different schedule for their students. So it's trying to fit it into that school that fits for that school. And I think that's one of the reasons why they moved it to 2027. I appreciate that. But I do believe, I've heard that there is no concern with the bill from schools for that, but I've heard it. I've had from my district, ESU and superintendents both come into my office and say they're concerned about this bill. So at this point in time, I'm going to watch how it goes. I'd be interested in seeing if there's a way that we don't have to make it as mandatory as it is for the instruction, but that there's another way that we can encourage or make it so that our schools have more discretion in what they do and how they apply this. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Bostelman. Senator Friesen, you're recognized, and this is your third opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. President. So after listening to the discussion today, and I think this is the type of thing that has to be done on more bills that we're looking at, And I think it has been a really good discussion this morning. One of my concerns when I think I've mentioned this previously is when we look at our whole picture of our education system, clear from pre-K to the university system. What I sometimes see is the overlap that we're having, and what might concern me is listening to some of the discussion here is that we're now trying to intentionally prepare kids to go straight into the job market when they graduate from high school. And so that concerned me a little bit when I hear this on the floor, that we need to prepare these kids so that they can grab these jobs the instant they get out of high school. And I don't ever want to be too understanding of, there's kids who shouldn't probably go on to higher education. But sometimes if you sidetrack yourself too quickly and enter a job market that locks you into something that you haven't been exposed to other things, it concerns me a little bit too, because you come out of high school and all you're looking for is to get that quick job. You sometimes now have boxed yourself into a career field which maybe is not going to be best for you longer term. And that's where I look at the way we are doing things today and the way the overlap between the high schools, community colleges, state colleges, the university system is all of those institutions are doing kind of all of the above. And we have a lot of overlap, and it concerns me a little bit that this seems to be a role, we can introduce kids to the idea in high school, but the learning part of a technical, what I call the technical part of a job, would be the community college system and working with business and delivering the type of employee that they need. And when you attend technical college, the thing that I liked about it when I attended it is they did include other things other than the course you were going into. They made sure that you were literate in the bookkeeping end of starting a business. They offered you other courses that you were deficient in to get you up to speed that the high school maybe didn't do. And so when I look at this, I'm starting to wonder if, yes, we can introduce kids to this. We can get them their interest tweaked in this, but should it get them ready for the workforce? That's where I'm having a little bit of a problem with, and maybe that's the job of our community colleges to teach the technical fields. And now we're seeing more overlap. We're starting to see high schools getting to where the community colleges should be some more. And I'm worried that you get these kids that come out of high school, they see this job opportunity, they've been partially trained in it, and now they're funneled off, and other opportunities, the door might be closed. And so I'm getting to be very reluctant now to say that this should be mandatory for graduation. Again, some kids don't like the technical parts of this at all. They are more in the arts, the things like that, and now you're going to require computer literacy. I'm getting a little more concerned. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Friesen. Senator Wayne, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, Senator Urban brought up maybe this is something more that the local school district should do. What I find interesting, it's not a knock on Senator Urban, because at least he's been consistent about his epic tax, consumption tax. But we don't take that same approach to property taxes. The state collects zero in property taxes, but we don't leave it to the local jurisdiction to solve the property tax problem. Because we as state senators see a need that needs to be addressed, so we bring a bill. I understand there are concerns about maybe overloading some school districts, but if there is some schools out there that don't have computers, that's the issue, Senator Bostelman, not the fact that this bill may require them to get a computer. It's that we need to make sure they have some computers. So Senator Albright and OPS, 3rd and 4th graders learn from their library instructors. Their librarians teach them introduction to code. introduction to code and learning about code, there's plenty of actual curriculum out there. What we are suggesting is we can't wait till 2026 before we start changing the culture of schools to understand that coding is important. It's a culture change. So even if this bill passed tonight or today, the reason there's an effective date later is because you're changing a culture. You still have people in this body who probably don't know how to use their phone completely. Probably couldn't program something right now if they were asked to. It was a different culture. And there are many people of the same seasoned experience, I won't say age, who are teaching. So it is a culture change. That's why the effective date is later. This is not something that's going to hurt schools overnight. Many of the schools are already doing this. But for those who aren't, we're saying, let's bump it up a little bit. Coding is important because there could be a point that you might not be able to even write a check without knowing a code. If you don't understand coding, it could fundamentally stop you from growing. This isn't saying when you get out of high school, you're going to go into the job market tomorrow. But what we are saying is just like writing and arithmetic, coding is going to be a part of those things. It just doesn't have a W and an R in it. But it's a part of essential education. So all we're doing is starting to change the culture. And if we don't want to, and other states are actually putting in stricter and more comprehensive reforms around coding, again, we're going to be left behind. So I would tell you to don't look at this as an unfunded mandate, because it's not. We're saying that coding has to be a part of the conversation when kids graduate, that is the future in which we are going. So let's make sure that they have the option to do that. And as far as bringing a bill and leaving it to local control, I've always said we like local control until we don't. We love local control until we don't. Until you get that property tax bill, we don't like local control anymore. But we like local control when it comes to something else. Oh, we like local control until OPS adopts the health standards that many people don't agree with. We like local control until Mutual of Omaha decides they're going to build something in downtown. And it's like, oh, we got to change TIF. We like local control until we don't.
1 minute.
And this is one of those moments where we are trying to walk a very balanced line of local control with NDE and making sure as a state we are preparing kids for the next job on the market that maybe we don't even know about yet. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Wayne. Senator Erdman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I listened to Senator Wayne. I want to know, what's a check? Anyway, so be it. Senator Wayne, I didn't say that this was too much for the education system. I think they're very capable of doing this without our help. The point I was trying to make is they don't. That's the point. They don't do it, okay? And if they did, you and Senator McKinney and others wouldn't be bringing this bill. We wouldn't be talking about this because they would just go ahead and do it and they wouldn't need us to help them. The other issue is, I don't believe there's a school in the state that doesn't have computers. I don't think there's one. Okay, so I don't think the computer is a problem. I think they all have them. They all did distance learning from home when the COVID pandemic was on. So I think they all have computers. But what I'm trying to say is they could do this, Senator Wayne, without us telling them to do it. And that is exactly what I think they should do without having to have Senator McKinney bring a bill for them. They should be able to do it. And I would assume that Senator Paul's sitting there listening and he was a principal. I would think that he could agree that they could do this if they wanted to, if they decided to. There's nothing requiring them not to do this, prohibiting them. They could do it. And so we're going to proceed forward to see where the vote is. But I just think that whether we vote for this or not, the schools can still do it. And I'm with you on the point that what do we do for 5 years while we're waiting for them to figure out how to do it? And so I think all that stuff can be accomplished with the current education system we got, except I don't have a lot of confidence in the Department of Education. So maybe that's why we need to do a bill, tell them what to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Erdman. Senator Moorfield would like to introduce some students from UNL sitting in the north balcony. Brooklyn Terrell, Jennifer Shepard, Riley Kirkpatrick, Patrick Baker, Lucas Jasinski, and Cameron Collier. Would you please stand and be recognized by your Nebraska Legislature? Returning to debate, Senator Lowe, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was just outside in the rotunda talking to some young people, and they said, "What are the old fogies talking about computers about?" I said, "Do they know anything about what they're talking about in these computers?" So with that, please vote for LB 1112, AM 1942, and 2101.
Thank you, Senator Lowe. Seeing no one in the queue, Senator McKinney, you're recognized to close on the adoption of AN 2101.
Thank you, Mr. President. In my close, I just will say that LB 1112 is a bill for the future of the state of Nebraska. It's to expose our students as early as possible to computer science and technology, to make sure that when they do grow and go into the workforce, that they are prepared. This isn't a bill to try to force every kid to go into coding and be a programmer. That's not what I'm trying to do. But I'm also, I also recognize that the world is changing and technology is changing every day. And we have to make sure that our students are prepared. Employers are fully in support of this bill because they already have a workforce shortage. And if we wait even longer, they're going to have an even more increased workforce shortage. And this is just preparing our students and making sure that they have opportunities. I think if we expose more kids to opportunities, we'll have better outcomes. That's one thing I've always preached, even before getting into the legislature, is making sure we expose kids and children and our youth to different opportunities. Maybe a kid doesn't want to go into coding. Maybe it's something else. Maybe they'll become a digital designer or something for the University of Nebraska and do all the amazing graphics that they have. It's just different things that they could be exposed to that may spark the brains that'll change our state and our country and our society. And that's what I'm attempting to do here. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator McKinney. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 2101. All those in favor, vote aye. Those opposed, vote nay. Have all voted that wish? Record, Mr. Clerk.
35 ayes, no nays on the adoption of Senator McKinney's amendment.
The amendment is adopted. Returning to debate, seeing no one in the queue, Senator Walz, you're recognized to close on AM 1942. Senator Walz waives closing. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 1942. All those in favor, vote aye. Those opposed, vote nay. Have all voted that wish? Record, Mr. Clerk.
34 ayes, no nays on adoption of committee amendments.
The amendment is adopted. Returning to debate, seeing no one in the queue, Senator McKinney, you're recognized to close on LB 1112. Senator McKinney waives closing. Members, the question is the advancement of LB 1112 to ENR initial. All those in favor, vote aye. Those opposed, vote nay. Have all voted? Record, Mr. Clerk.
33 ayes, no nays on the advancement of the bill.
LB 1112 advances. Mr. Clerk, for items.
I'm fine right now. Thank you, Mr. President.
Returning to the agenda.
Mr. President, select file. LB 804, Senator McKinney. I have no amendments to the bill.
Senator McKinney for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to advance LB 804 to ENR for engrossing.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The bill is advanced. Mr. Clerk.
LB 887, Senator. I have enrollment and review amendments, first of all.
Mr. McKinney for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adopt the ENR amendments to LB 887.
Members, you've heard the motion to adopt the ENR amendments. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. They are adopted.
I have nothing further on that bill, Senator.
Senator McKinney for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to advance LB 887 to ENR for engrossing.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. Bill is advanced.
LB 698, Senator. I have no amendments to the bill.
Senator McKinney.
Mr. President, I move to advance LB 698 to ENR for engrossing.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The bill is advanced.
Mr. President, Legislative Bill 820, no ENR. Senator Matt Hansen would move to amend with AM 2147.
Senator Matt Hansen, you're recognized to open on AM 2147.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, colleagues. Just a reminder, LB 820 is my speaker priority, changing the population threshold between primary and metro class cities. AM 2147 was something suggested to us by bill drafters, and just because of where it fell in the section, it wasn't a ENR amendment, so they asked me to bring it. And I'll just read the whole thing. So on page 4, line 21, we're to strike the phrase "of such cities," show is stricken, and insert, quote, "cities described in this section." Because of how the paragraphs broke down in the bill, they thought cities described in this section was better terminology than "of such cities," and therefore they asked for this amendment. I'd ask for your green vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Matt Hansen. Debate is now open. Seeing no one wishing to talk, Senator Hansen waives closing. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 2147. All those in favor, vote aye. Those opposed, vote nay. Have all voted that wish? Record, Mr. Clerk.
34 ayes, no nays on the adoption of Senator Hansen's amendment.
The amendment is adopted. Mr.
I have
Clerk.
nothing further on that bill, Senator McKinney.
Senator McKinney for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to advance LB 820 to ENR for engrossing.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. LB 820 is advanced.
LB 840, Senator. I have no amendments to the bill.
Senator McKinney for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to advance LB 840 to ENR for engrossing.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Bill is advanced.
Mr. President, next bill, Legislative Bill 436. I have enrollment and review amendments, first of all, Senator.
Senator McKinney for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to adopt the ENR amendments to LB 436.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The ENR amendments are adopted.
Senator Ben Hansen would move to amend AM 2157.
Senator Ben Hansen, you're recognized to open on AM 2157.
Thank you, Mr. President. On general file, we adopted an amendment from the Department of Health and Human Services that reinstated language under the current law in section 38-409. This made it so that LB 824 would require licensing in order to perform certain modalities under the Athletic Training Practice Act. In reviewing the ENR amendment, it was decided that further clarification was needed. I worked with both the athletic trainers and DHHS to bring AM 2157 that reinstates additional language from current law under section 38-408. The language in the amendment makes it clear that the application of heat, cold, air, water, or exercise shall not be restricted by the Athletic Training Practice Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hansen. Debate is now open. Seeing no one wishing to talk, Senator Hansen, you're recognized to close on your amendment. Senator Hansen waives closing. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 2157. All those in favor, vote aye. Those opposed, vote nay. Have all voted that wish? Record, Mr. Clerk.
37 ayes, no nays on the adoption of Senator Hansen's amendment.
The amendment is adopted.
I have nothing further on the bill, Senator.
Senator McKinney?
Mr. President, I move to advance LB 436 to ENR for engrossing.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The bill is advanced.
Mr. President, Senator McKinney, LR 283CA, I have no amendments to the bill, Senator.
Senator McKinney for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to advance LR 283CA to ENR for engrossing.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The CA is advanced.
Legislative Bill 998, I have enrollment and review amendments, Senator.
Senator McKinney for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to adopt the ENR amendments to LB 998.
Members, you've heard the motion to adopt the ENR amendments. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The amendments are adopted.
I have nothing further on that bill, Senator.
Senator McKinney for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to advance LB 998 to ENR for engrossing.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. LB 998 is advanced.
Legislative Bill 769, Senator, I have no amendments to the bill.
Senator McKinney.
Mr. President, I move to advance LB 769 to ENR for engrossing.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The bill is advanced.
Legislative Bill 864, Senator, I have no amendments to the bill.
Senator McKinney for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to advance LB 864 to ENR for engrossing.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. LB 864 is advanced.
Legislative Bill 1065 has enrollment and review amendments, Senator.
Senator McKinney for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to adopt the ENR amendments to LB 1065.
Members, you've heard the motion to adopt the ENR amendments. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. The amendments are adopted.
I have nothing further on that bill, Senator.
Senator McKinney for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to advance LB 1065 to ENR for engrossing.
Members, you've heard the discussion and the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. LB 1065 is advanced.
Legislative Bill 1246, Senator, has enrollment and review amendments.
Senator McKinney for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to adopt the ENR amendments to LB 1246.
Members, you've heard the motion to adopt the ENR amendments. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. The amendments are adopted.
I have nothing further on that bill, Senator.
Senator McKinney for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to advance LB 1246 to ENR for engrossing.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. The bill is advanced.
Legislative Bill 848, I have no amendments to the bill, Senator.
Senator McKinney for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to advance LB 848 to ENR for engrossing.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. LB 848 is advanced.
Senator 1173, I have enrollment and review amendments, first of all.
Senator McKinney for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to adopt the ENR amendments to LB 1173.
Members, you've heard the motion to adopt the ENR amendments. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, say nay. The amendments are adopted.
Senator Hunt would move to amend with AM 2200.
Senator Hunt, you're recognized to open on AM 2200.
Good afternoon, colleagues. I'm happy to have the opportunity to bring this amendment today, which is the product of nearly a year's worth of studying and work. This is a friendly amendment to LB 1173, which I have cleared with Senator Arch and the committee. AM 2200 would add portions of my LB 392 to the committee bill. As an overview, LB 392 is the product of my interim study, LR 198, which examined the state's practice of intercepting Social Security benefits intended for foster children. I learned about this from a national investigation done by the Marshall Project that aired on NPR, which revealed that a majority of states were quietly doing this for decades. It was clear that it wasn't right and that we could figure out how to do something about it in Nebraska. The interim study revealed that this was indeed happening in Nebraska to something like 400 youth a month, generating nearly $3 million a year for the state that was meant for those kids in Social Security benefits. It's been going on for at least 20 years in Nebraska. The kids that are eligible for this money are kids who are disabled or they have a parent who is dead or disabled. So these are the most vulnerable of the most vulnerable children in our state's care, and we have been taking their money without any transparency or any due process. After the hearing on that bill, I spoke with Chairman Arch about trying to get the bill execed on and sent to the floor. Time was moving quickly, as it is this session, and I had already designated another bill as my personal priority, which was actually a tough decision because I wanted to prioritize this one as well. But Chairman Arch suggested to me that the committee would be more likely to support a narrowed version of the bill that took out the part that would have required the state to conserve a portion of Social Security funds for the youth in a trust account. Senator Arch said that the committee would probably be more amenable to just the provisions requiring notification to the youth and their guardian ad litems. While I would have liked to see us do a little bit more, I'm content with this approach. So we made the changes and worked to find a vehicle for this compromise amendment since the bill wasn't otherwise moving without a priority. After making the changes Senator Arch suggested, I worked with DHHS and have incorporated all of their recommendations. These were all minor technical changes to streamline the implementation and make sure they have enough time to update their rules. The advocates who helped work on the original LB 932 have also signed off on these changes. It's kind of rare and exciting that we have agreement between the HHS committee, the child welfare advocates, namely Appleseed, and the Department of Health and Human Services. DHHS estimates that this carved down version will have a substantially reduced fiscal note. With the content of AM 2200, the state can right the wrong of retaining youth Social Security benefits without their knowledge, providing essential transparency for children who already face more obstacles than children who are not in state care. With notice and accounting information provided to the child or their attorney, the child or the primary adults in their life will have awareness that the youth is eligible for these Social Security benefits, the amount available for the child's personal use, and how the state is using the funds. If and when the child leaves the system, their attorney could apply to have the payee changed to a more appropriate party, like a family member, rather than the state. Without AM 2200, the youth and their attorneys may never know that the state has been receiving their Social Security benefits at all, and they may never have the opportunity to receive those benefits when the child leaves the state's care. It's imperative that we pass this. Please vote green on AM 2200. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hunt. Debate is now open on AM 2200. Seeing no one wishing to speak, Senator Hunt, you're recognized to close on AM 2200. Senator Hunt waives closing. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 2200 to LB 1173. All those in favor, vote aye. Those opposed, vote nay. Have all voted? Record, Mr. Clerk.
29 ayes, no nays on the amendment, Mr. President.
The amendment is adopted.
I have nothing further on the bill, Senator McKinney.
Senator McKinney for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to advance LB 1173 to ENR for engrossing.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. LB 1173 is advanced. Members, we will be skipping over LB 1173A due to the change in the fiscal note. Going on to the next item, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, 1236 on select file. I have enrollment and review amendments pending.
Senator McKinney for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to adopt the ENR amendments to LB 1236.
Members, you've heard the motion to adopt the ENR amendments. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The amendments are adopted.
I have nothing further on that bill, Senator.
Senator McKinney for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to advance LB 1236 to ENR for engrossing.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The bill advances.
Legislative Bill 780, Senator. I have enrollment and review amendments, first of all.
Senator McKinney for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to adopt the ENR amendments to LB 780.
Members, you've heard the motion to adopt the ENR amendments. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The amendments are adopted.
Senator Wayne would move to amend AM 2156.
Senator Wayne, you're recognized to open on AM 2156.
Thank you, Mr. President. AM 2156 would incorporate the provisions of LB 974 into LB 780. I want to thank Senator Gregert for allowing me to include this bill in his bill. LB 974, which I introduced at the request of the Nebraska Workers' Compensation Court, would amend both our current transit authority statutes to clarify that transit authorities are not exempt from workers' compensation assessments or unemployment insurance payments. The language in LB 974 mirrors the similar language that was included in the tax exemption language for port authorities last year. This was brought to us both by the Workers' Compensation Court and the Department of Labor. They're obviously both in favor of it. Metro Transit is a transit authority in Omaha and is the only transit authority in the state and is currently paying both workers' compensation assessment and unemployment insurance payments. So this bill will have no impact on their operations. The underlying bill, LB 974, received no opposition testimony in the hearing and was advanced by the Urban Affairs Committee unanimously 7-0. With that, I'd ask you to vote green on AM 2156.
Thank you, Senator Wayne. Debate is now open on AM 2156. Seeing no one in the queue, Senator Wayne, you're recognized to close on your amendment.
So I just wanted to be real quick. Again, this is just a cleanup bill. There was an interpretation by some attorneys that felt like they were being exempted. It was never the intent. So this just clarifies that, showing them that they aren't exempted. So thank you, Mr. President. Please vote green.
Thank you, Senator Wayne. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 2156. All those in favor, vote aye. Those opposed, vote nay. Have all voted that wish? Record, Mr. Clerk.
36 ayes, no nays on the adoption of Senator Wayne's amendment.
The amendment is adopted. Returning to debate, Senator Wayne, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I just wanted to give a big shout out to the Workers' Compensation Court. They actually testified in neutral on this bill. You know, testifying in neutral is a big deal to me this year. So just want to give them a shout out. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Wayne. Mr. Clerk.
I have nothing further on the bill, Senator McKinney.
Senator McKinney for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to advance LB 780 to ENR for engrossing.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. LB 780 is advanced.
Legislative Bill 925, Senator. I have enrollment and review amendments pending.
Senator McKinney for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to adopt the ENR amendments to LB 925.
Members, you've heard the motion to adopt the ENR amendments. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The amendments are adopted.
I have nothing further on that bill, Senator.
Senator McKinney for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to advance LB 925 to ENR for engrossing.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. LB 925 is advanced.
925A, Senator, I have no amendments to the bill.
Senator McKinney for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to advance LB 925A to ENR for engrossing.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The bill is advanced.
Mr. President, the next bill, LB 717, no ENRs. First Amendment to the bill, Senator McDonald, AM 2961.
Senator McDonald, you're recognized to open on Amendment 2061.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, colleagues. AM 2061 is a simple yet important amendment. It consists of my bill LB 1040, which proposed to change the definition of law enforcement officer as it relates to the In the Line of Duty Duty Compensation Act. As you heard during general file discussions, this act provides a one-time death benefit to the family of the firefighter, law enforcement officer, or other first responder who dies in the line of duty. LB 255, which created the act in 2021, was passed and enacted into law with the absolute best intentions. Having said that, an oversight was brought to our attention, and AM 2061 will address this omission. The act currently defines law enforcement officer as any member of the Nebraska State Patrol, any county or deputy sheriff, or any member of the police force of any city or village. Unfortunately and inadvertently, an unintended consequence of this definition is such that a number of law enforcement officers were excluded as being eligible for this benefit. The definition does not include officers employed by certain government entities, such as state, local, or regional educational institutions, airport authority police, or deputy state sheriffs not employed by the state patrol, just to name a few. AM 2061 proposes to use the definition of law enforcement officer found in section 81-1401, which would include those deserving and serving officers who were unintentionally left out. LB 1040, which is now AM 2061, was advanced out of the Business and Labor Committee with unanimous vote. I'd like to thank the committee for their support, and I'd like to thank both Senator Moorfield and Senator Pansing Brooks for allowing me to bring forward this amendment to LB 717. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator McDonald. Debate is now open on AM 2061. Seeing no one in the queue, Senator McDonald, you're recognized to close on Amendment 2061. Senator McDonald waives closing. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 2061 to LB 717. All those in favor, vote aye. Those opposed, vote nay. Have all voted that wish? Record, Mr. Clerk.
30 ayes, no nays on the adoption of Senator McDonald's amendment.
The amendment is adopted.
Mr. President, Senator Friesen would move to amend AM 2079.
Senator Friesen, you're recognized to open on AM 2079.
Thank you, Mr. President. In our past discussions, I questioned whether or not this is something the state of Nebraska should do. And obviously we moved ahead. So now I did talk a little bit about, adding some other workers in there whose jobs and public sector jobs require them to be in very hazardous, dangerous situations. But I didn't bring an amendment to add those, which I do think that there should be a little bit of discussion on some of those jobs. Department of Transportation workers are out there all the time in a known hazardous environment, working on our roads and maintaining those roads for us. But I thought at this point, at least, I would address maybe, we can start to measure what a human life is worth. We talked a lot about increasing this. We started out at 50,000 and then we were getting up into that, I think 200 or 150,000. And my amendment, what it does is basically say it would be, I think it's a 2,050,000. The way it's, I thought I was going to strike the 50,000, but obviously we made a mistake. So the amendment is very simple. It just increases the amount of what a human life is worth. And when you have workers who are out there and doing these jobs, and we all admit that there is some danger to it, we properly compensate maybe some of those people when they are lost in the line of duty. And if I recall correctly, the number of people that met this requirement was fairly small. It shouldn't be a huge fiscal impact. But again, starting with some numbers, let's talk a little bit about maybe what people are worth. And this is where I think I get into a little bit of a problem, because we start to get ahead of what our job is here in the state legislature. And I am going to support the amendment. That doesn't mean I will support the bill, because I still think this is something we shouldn't be into. It can be addressed more at the local issue. But if we're going to be talking about what is the value of some of our public safety workers, and I thank Senator McDonald for clarifying a little bit who is a public safety worker. I do think that makes the bill a little better. But I think we also should be looking at some of our other public workers that are out there and exposing themselves, I guess, to what I call a high hazard job. And so as we study the bill a little bit more and it gets closer to the final reading, maybe we need to address the issue of Department of Transportation workers, for instance, and maybe some of our other public workers in the rural electrics and NPPD and OPPD that are out there working in the storms and turning on our electricity when we have bad weather. And so this is a very simple amendment. I hope people take it seriously and look at it. And I will support the amendment, but I will not support the bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Friesen. Debate is now open. Senator Erdman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wonder if Senator Friesen would yield to a question.
Senator Friesen, would you yield?
Yes, I would.
Senator Friesen, I think I read your amendment and you're going to strike 100 but leave 50,000. So it's 1,050,000. Is that correct?
I think it would, if you read the bill, it might be 2,050,000.
Okay. Okay. I didn't
You'd
go
have to
back.
look at the original language.
Yeah, I didn't read it. I just read what your amendment was. It's going to strike 100 and replace that with 1,000,000. So I just assumed it was 1,050,000. So when you said this is something that can be handled locally, can you reference what that might be?
Well, our local department, I mean, we do have life insurance policy for volunteer firefighters. We've had that for a lot of years. It's just something that we've done that we saw the need. And I question whether or not the state should be involved in some of this.
So the fiscal note talked about this could cost us 600,000 a year. Did you read that part?
I did, and I forget the number of people, public safety officers we've lost in the line of duty over the past couple of years. I think somebody else might have that number.
Okay.
I don't.
So if each one of those departments were to buy a term life insurance policy, 600,000 would go a long way in buying term life insurance. Would you agree?
I think in today's markets, yes, probably so.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you answering those questions. I had voted no on this bill the last time. I don't think anything's changed. I think Senator Friesen alluded to that in his comments when he said, I'm not sure the state should get involved in this. I didn't realize we were a life insurance company. But I think if you're going to do something about protecting these, the incomes of these individuals who risk their life, and I'm not downplaying that, it's important. In fact, it's vital. But I think there's a better way to handle this, and I think that would be with a term life insurance or some kind of a life insurance policy instead of requiring the state to do this. And so I was a no last time, and I'll continue to be a no again. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Erdman and Senator Friesen. Returning to debate. Seeing no one in the queue, Senator Friesen, you're recognized to close on AM 2079. Senator Friesen waives closing. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 2079 to LB 717. All those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote no. Have all voted that wish? Record, Mr. Clerk.
21 ayes, 2 nays on the amendment, Mr. President.
The amendment is not adopted. Returning to debate, Senator Friesen, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now that we've established what a life is worth, let's talk again a little bit about maybe what we should be looking at and why we should be doing this, and is it the role of the legislature to do this? Again, I think we started last year with just 50,000, and now we're jumping up to 250,000. We've clarified a little bit who the workers are. So I'd like to hear a little more discussion on should we add some more of our public servants that are out there in a hazardous duty, providing services to the state that maybe should be included in this bill. Why are we limiting it to the public safety officers? And I again thank Senator McDonald for bringing a clarification who that includes, because it was pretty broad last time. But I do think there's a lot of occupations out there that are, even with the state employees, that are engaged in very hazardous duties. And we probably have more lives lost in those departments than we do in some of the other public safety positions. So again, should we be providing some sort of life insurance policy, some sort of term life insurance policy, some sort of compensation for those workers who are putting their life on the line, keeping our roads up, for instance? That's just an example that I have. And I'm just questioning whether or not we have included enough people in this. I was serious when I put the amendment forward. You take a young man with a family, $250,000 doesn't go a long ways. And if we are saying that we want to be responsible employers, and we know that these jobs are extremely hazardous, we should be stepping up and looking at how we might do that. Again, maybe our pay isn't high enough. Maybe our pay is such a low level that these families can't afford the term insurance that it takes to protect themselves. Sometimes we need to look at our pay scale, which I think when you look at a Department of Corrections and what we've done over there in the past few years, we should have been raising pay there for the last 8 years. And instead, we finally got it done last year and got it up to where it's a respectable level that we expect employees to work there and stay there. And so again, if we're paying our employees that little that they can't afford to buy a term life insurance policy to protect their families, maybe our pay isn't high enough. And instead of us doing this and addressing it when somebody does get killed in the line of duty, maybe we should be looking at it like maybe their pay should be higher, and they can address how much insurance they'd like to have and what kind of coverage they have. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Friesen. Senator Matt Hansen, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon, colleagues. I don't intend to speak on this too much, but I did want to clarify at least some of my intent, because both of these bills, Senator Moorfield's and Senator McDonald's, are amending a bill that we all passed of mine last year. It was the last bill we did in general file last year. And I just want to point out that that bill we did last year was the third attempt of mine to get this passed, and it's the fourth that I know of, including an attempt by Senator Mello before me. And what I'd heard feedback for years and years and years was smaller amount, less people, higher standard. I personally would have supported being much more broader and much more generous, but I was kind of told, based on the situation and based on the mood of the body, to get it to move forward, I had to go narrow. And that's something I worked on for a number of years to get accomplished. If people want to come forward and propose including more individuals, I would certainly be supportive of that. Some of my earlier versions were more generous, but this is ultimately what we could get enacted into statute. I appreciate Senator McDonald's clarification. We didn't mean to exclude university police officers when we were defining law enforcement officer. And I think this clarification in terms of actually capturing law enforcement officer helps. But that's where I was coming from in terms of who is worthy or who is wanting to be covered. I think we as a state probably owe many public employees a strong duty, especially for asking them to go into risky situations on behalf of us as a state and behalf of us and our constituents. But this is what this body would ultimately allow me to pass after multiple years of trying, and that's where we got it. We got it to that amount in that category of public safety officers. I would be excited to see people consider broadening it in the future, but as I said before, I had wanted to be expansive. I had wanted to be inclusive, and this body was kind of hesitant to do that, and that's how we ended up where we ended up. With that, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Matt Hansen. Senator Clements, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not going to be voting for this. I think there is a difference between volunteer forces and paid forces who are negotiating their contract and being paid by an entity who probably has more resources to provide life insurance benefits. I haven't looked in to see what benefits are for the paid fire or police, but I just feel like that the volunteers are probably very lowly compensated for life insurance. And the jump from 50,000 to 250,000 in 1 year is a really big jump. And I would have thought maybe go to 100, but from 50 to 250 was quite a big increase before we have found out even what the cost of this really is and how it's really going to work. So I do not support LB 717. I would support it if we would limit it to volunteer departments, and then I would probably rather have a smaller amount to get started with this. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Clements. Senators from Sarpy County would like to recognize a group of 30 leadership from Sarpy County members sitting in the north balcony. Would you please stand and be recognized by your Nebraska Legislature? Returning to debate, Senator Friesen, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know a lot of people are reluctant to vote against this. It makes it look like you're voting against our law enforcement personnel, our firemen and firefighters. But we talked last time about when we deal with stuff basically on an emotional issue or whether we're dealing it on facts. And to me, I'm trying to stick to the facts of this issue, and I will be able to vote against this. I do think we've overstepped our bounds and we've gone where we shouldn't go. And so I realize, lots of times we bring bills here and it's very difficult for people to vote against them. It can be used politically. That's too bad. But it is these tough issues that we're supposed to discuss and to work through and to make sure that we're doing the right thing. And that's what I'm focused on right now, and I think this is a place where we shouldn't be. If we're going to start expanding this program, you know that down the road, we're going to make this amount larger. We're going to continue to grow it. And we're going to continue to add people to this program because it's hard to vote against our state roads workers who are out there doing their job, or our rural electrics who are out there in the lightning storm and the blizzards, putting our electricity back up, our power lines up. They are working under severely hazardous conditions, and in that occupation, we're bound to have accidents. And we don't seem to want to address those issues. But again, I don't feel it's somewhere we should be going. But down the road, as we put these things in place, it's easy to add upon it, add different people to the list, and it all makes us feel better about those jobs. Maybe instead we should be focusing on the pay that those people receive and that they can buy their own insurance if they choose. And I think that's what most people would want if you would ask them, give me some money up front that I can do things with my family instead of giving it to them when I'm gone. Maybe I can look out for them with a term policy. But if you would give me a little bit more pay, maybe I could spend some time on vacation with my family. Maybe I don't have to have the second job. Those are the things I think we're stepping into now by adding these benefits. It doesn't help the person till they're gone. And yes, it's a help to the family. But again, most people, if they could afford it, if their wages were high enough, would probably look at that and be buying a term life insurance policy. Maybe some of them even do. And yet now we're going to add $250,000 onto the top of that. And yet there's some people out there, especially when you get out to the volunteers there, where there is no pay, there's no settlement from the city or whoever else is in the paid departments. It does create a little bit of a different playing field. And so I again, hope everybody looks at this and looks past the fact that this is a tough vote to take, but it doesn't mean that I don't support my law enforcement and my firefighters. I do appreciate everything they do, but I think there's different ways to approach this. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Friesen. Senator McDonald, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to address a couple things. Again, this benefit is not for the people that are serving, not the police officers, not the correction officers, not the firefighters paid our volunteer. It's for their families because they've made the ultimate sacrifice. And when we talk about what is our role as state senators, well, some of these people, and we don't know, we don't have a crystal ball going forward into the future, but we know by the past, they're going to make the ultimate sacrifice. And some are going to be state employees. Some are not. But it doesn't take away their sacrifice that they've made serving the citizens that they took an oath to protect and serve. So I don't want to lose focus on what we're doing here today. What we did with the amendment was try to clarify based on an oversight of what a police officer is and who falls under that according to the statute. But don't forget, these are the people that said goodbye to their families in the morning, thinking that they would see them after their shift. And they never came home. And we respect that sacrifice. But now the family's faced with this. That possibly could have been the only breadwinner of the family, or at least half. Possibly both people were working. And now for the family, they're going to deal with that for the rest of their lives. Not only the loss, but the loss of income. So the idea of putting a value on a human life, and earlier, and I voted for Senator Friesen's amendment, and I believe he was sincere talking about what a human life is worth. Is $250,000 enough? No, I don't think so. Is it a way to say thank you to that family and try to make sure they're financially at least a little bit more stable after their loved one made the ultimate sacrifice? Yes. And that's the message we're sending today. Out of a $5 billion annual budget, we're looking at potentially these people, and no one knows, could there be 4 tomorrow? Could there be 4 next year? Could there be 10 tomorrow? We don't know. But we know they're doing dangerous work on behalf of the citizens of the state of Nebraska And this is not for their ultimate sacrifice. It's for their family who has to continue after the ultimate sacrifice. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator McDonald. Mr. Clerk, for an amendment?
Mr. President, if I may, right before that, Senator Hunt offers LR 320. That'll be laid over at this time. I have amendments to be printed. Senator Postleman 1102A, Flood 707, and Albright 933, and Arch to 1037, McDonald to 964. Senator Clements would move to amend the bill, Mr. President.
Senator Clements, you're recognized to open on your floor amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, the jump from 50,000 to 250,000 was more than I could support. I've put in an amendment to strike the 250,000 and change it to 100,000. If I wrote it correctly, I believe I did. And I think it would take me too long to try to go through the bill and restrict it to volunteer departments, which was what I really was interested in also. But I'm not sure how to legally do that and make sure we don't get in trouble with constitutional things. So to move it along today, I'm proposing changing the death benefit from 250,000 to 100,000. It was just 50,000 a year ago, and this would change to a $100,000 benefit, which I would support if it's adopted. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Clements. Debate is now open on the floor amendment of Senator Clements. Senator Morfeld, you're recognized.
Colleagues, I won't take up very much time. I just want to note that I'm not supportive of this amendment. We all voted fairly overwhelmingly in favor of $250,000 on general file, and I would ask that you vote no on this. The reason why we did $250,000 was it wasn't a number that we just picked out of a hat, but we knew that funeral expenses are usually around $50,000. Then you have medical expenses, which generally in a catastrophic type of incident like this is anywhere from $20,000 to $100,000. And then we wanted some money for the family to be able to survive and live. And so that's the rationale behind $250,000. It's already been approved by this body on general file. That was the intent of the bill. I urge you to vote no on floor amendment 73. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Morfeld. Senator Clements, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to point out that the bill is not a flat $250,000 amount. It's $250,000 plus an inflation adjustment each year starting in 2023. And we've been hearing that inflation is 7.5%, and 7.5% of 250,000 is 18,750. So 2023, we're going to be at 268,750. And if inflation keeps going that way, in 10 years, it will double. And so that is why with the inflation increase, the 100,000 would start at 100, but go to 107 pretty quickly, and likely to double in 10 years to 200,000 if inflation stays at the 7% level. Hopefully it doesn't. But I just wanted to point out that we're really going to be at about 269,000 in 1 year, and then going up from there. It's okay to protect for inflation, but I would rather start at 100 than the 250 as the LB 717. So I ask for your green vote on FA 73. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Clements. Senator Friesen, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just think I should rise to clarify some statements that were recently made. I know a funeral does not cost $50,000, and I think health insurance issues or health issues or medical care is all covered, even with our volunteers and with everyone else. They do have workman's comp. So to say that we're going to spend $50,000 for a funeral, I think is excessive. Average funeral is probably $10,000 to $15,000. But again, I look at the healthcare issues, and those issues are addressed either through workman's comp or the health insurance plans that all the departments have. So I don't see that there's an issue of the health care of that worker being addressed with this. This is just to help the families move on after they've lost a loved one in the line of duty. So we just need to look at the facts. Let's stick to the facts and see once if this is where we should be going. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Friesen. Senator Flood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I oppose Senator Clement's amendment, FA 73. I think that $250,000 is a fair amount. I think about what happened here in Lincoln with the investigator that found himself on the opposite end of a gun from an offender whose trial, by the way, starts in Columbus pretty soon. They can't hold it in Lincoln. Tell me that's not worth $250,000. I disagree with taking it down to $100,000. For the record, I voted for Senator Friesen's amendment. The men and women of law enforcement go out of their way. Nobody else gets called in the middle of the night to deal with a drunk that won't leave the parking lot. They get called to go deal with people that find themselves oftentimes at the worst spot in their life. And they're asked to protect the public safety, and sometimes they don't come home. I don't think this is unreasonable. I support LB 717. That's why I voted for it on general file, and I look forward to it passing. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Flood. Seeing none in the queue, Senator Clement, you're recognized to close on floor amendment 73.
Thank you, Mr. President. This was a brand new bill a year ago, and it did pass with 50,000. And I thought the proponents were pleased with that. And I'm willing to increase it to 100,000. And that's my comfort level. And it's going to also have inflation increasing it yearly, starting next year. And so I urge your green vote on FA 73. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Clements. Members, the question is the adoption of floor amendment 73. All those in favor, vote aye. Those opposed, vote nay. Have all voted that wish? Record, Mr. Clerk.
5 ayes, 25 nays, Mr. President, on the amendment.
The amendment is not adopted. Senator Morfeld, you're recognized to close on LB 717.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I urge you to support LB 717, and I appreciate the discussion and the debate. I think this will go a long way in making sure that our first responders' families are taken care of if the worst thing happens to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Morfeld. Mr. Clerk.
I have nothing further to bill, Mr. President.
Senator McKinney for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to advance LB 717 to ENR for engrossing.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. There's been a request for a record vote. Members will actually do a machine vote. You've heard the discussion and the bill. All those in favor, vote aye. Those opposed, vote nay. Have all voted that wish? Record, Mr. Clerk.
32 ayes, 4 nays, Mr. President, on the motion to advance the bill.
LB 717 advances. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, the next bill, Legislative Bill 1037, Senator McKinney, I have enrollment and review amendments, first of all.
Senator McKinney for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to adopt the ENR amendments to LB 1037.
Members, you've heard the motion to adopt the ENR amendments. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The amendments are adopted.
Senator Wayne has AM 2047. I understand he wished to withdraw. Thank you, Senator. Mr. President, Senator Arch would move to amend with AM 2149.
Senator Arch, you're recognized to open on AM 2149.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, colleagues. As you recall, LB 1037 would direct the Department of Administrative Services to hire a consultant to analyze our current procurement process and make recommendations for improvements. The bill also contains provisions of LB 1064, which provides a funding mechanism to permit DAS to move to an electronic procurement model. AM 2149 is to address a concern that Senator Wayne raised during the general file debate about having the entity that currently carries out procurement direct the analysis of its practices. I gave Senator Wayne my word I would work on some language between general and select, that is AM 2149, which I did run by Senator Wayne. This amendment clarifies that the evaluation will be a collaborative effort between the legislature and DAS. Everybody wants to move forward and get our procurement practices where they should be to ensure we make the best use of our taxpayer dollars and we ensure we provide the best services to Nebraskans. So the language that's included here includes the chairperson of the exec board, government, and HHS, as well as other members of the legislature as such chairpersons deemed appropriate to work with DAS to do the study and to come up with recommendations. The bill calls for a report by November 15th with the anticipation that the recommendations will lead to legislation seeking significant changes to the process, and it is a tight window. The bill has an emergency clause, so the quicker we can get the bill passed, the sooner we start moving forward. And with that, I urge your green vote on AM 2149 and your green vote on LB 1037. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Arch. Senator Coulterman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was wondering if Senator Arch would yield to one question.
Senator Arch, would you yield?
Yes, I will.
Senator Arch, I appreciate the amendment and the bill itself. I have one question about who hires a consultant. Will that be our committee, a committee that is put together by the unicameral, or will that be DAS?
Well, somebody has to sign the contract, and the contract will be signed by DAS. So technically, who hires? The people that sign the contract. However, my discussions with Director Jackson and the language here, the intent is that we would also be involved in the selection of that contractor in addition to the study itself. So the answer is both of us, but somebody has to sign the contract. The contract will be signed by DAS.
Okay, thank you. I would encourage everyone to vote green on both of these.
Thank you, Senator Coulterman and Senator Arch. Seeing no one in the queue, Senator Arch, you're recognized to close on amendment. He waives closing. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 2149 to LB 1037. All those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have all voted that wish? Record, Mr. Clerk.
43 ayes, no nays on adoption of Senator Arch's amendment.
The amendment is adopted. Mr. Clerk.
I have nothing further on the bill, Mr. President.
Senator McKinney for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to advance LB 1037 to ENR for engrossing.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. LB 1037 is advanced.
Let's see. Mr. President, 964 on select files. No ENRs, Senator McDonald would move to amend AM 2146.
Senator McDonald, you're recognized to open on AM 2146.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to the speaker who allowed us to use the last 3 minutes here, and I will go quickly. AM 2146 consists of a bill I introduced last session, LB 660, which proposes to amend the State Employees Collective Bargaining Act to clarify certain employees of the university system and certain employees of the state colleges are able to petition the Commission of Industrial Relations and certification of exclusive bargaining representatives, which bargaining units that are based on campus where those employees are employed. The change is necessary to ensure that the affected employees are not required to seek statewide or system-wide certification. State Employees Collective Act was put in place in 1987. I'd like to thank Business Labor Committee for voting this unanimously out of committee. I'd also note that there is no fiscal note, and also try to thank Senator Bostar, the last person I should thank for allowing me to amend his bill. Thank you, Senator Bostar.
Thank you, Senator McDonald. Debate is now open on AM 2146. Seeing no one in the queue, Senator McDonald, you're recognized to close. Senator McDonald waives closing. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 2146 to LB 964. All those in favor, vote aye. Those opposed, vote nay. Have all voted that wish? Record, Mr. Clerk.
37 ayes, 1 nay on the adoption of Senator McDonald's amendment.
The amendment is adopted. Mr. Clerk.
Nothing further in the bill, Mr. President.
Senator McKinney for a motion.
Mr. President, I move to advance LB 964 to ENR for engrossing.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. LB 964 is advanced. Mr. Clerk for items.
I have nothing at this time, Mr. President. Thank you. Motion. Yep.
Members, we're returning to the 4 o'clock item on the agenda. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, Senator Brewer would move to place Legislative Bill 773 on general file pursuant to Rule 3, Section 20B.
Senator Brewer, you're recognized to open on your amendment, or in your motion, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. President, and it should be noted that you started exactly on time. Good afternoon, colleagues. We are here this afternoon not to debate constitutional carry. We're going to debate a poll motion. I want to start by sharing some thoughts on a poll motion. I think a poll motion has a place in our rules, and it should be used, but only in exceptional circumstances. So with that said, let's look at that. When I say a poll motion should only be used in exceptional circumstances, the bill in question should be a senator's priority bill, a priority bill. It should address a statewide issue with a broad public support. And I think it should be deadlocked in the committee without the votes to kill it or advance it. LB 773 meets this criteria. LB 773 is my priority bill. This is the most important bill that I have brought before this body in the 6 years that I've been here. I designated this my priority bill the first hour of the first day of this session. I have attempted many times over those 6 years to get constitutional carry to become the law in Nebraska. If you remember right, last year, I championed LB 236. I wrote that specifically to avoid the challenges of Douglas and Lancaster County. By leaving them out of that, the Attorney General determined that that was unconstitutional. And so LB 236 was amended into another form
and we lost the opportunity to have constitutional carry in Nebraska. Now, is this a statewide issue? Last year, we had 91 of our 93 counties pass a resolution to declare themselves Second Amendment sanctuary counties. If you go into your drives and you Google constitutional carry and you go back 6 years and look at the emails you received, if you go back and just look at the ones you received since we've gone into session, if you look at those orange cards that you've got, you would see that we're in well excess of 1,000 messages, umpteen emails, phone calls. So I believe this is a statewide issue. Those cards, those emails came from all 49 districts. I've got 500 and some in my office. If you want to come look at them, or better yet, I'll bring them on Thursday. I believe that the passion of Nebraskans for the Second Amendment was very clear when we attempted, or it was attempted, to pass red flag in Nebraska. We filled the hallways, we filled the briefing rooms, everywhere. There are certain things that people are passionate about: the death penalty, abortion, and the Second Amendment. So to deny this bill the opportunity to be heard is why I'm asking for a poll motion. But I want you to understand that it was a mutual understanding between Senator Lathrop and myself. He came to me and expressed to me the situation as it was, that there wasn't the votes to bring it out, that my path ahead would have to be a poll motion. I would tell you, from the time that Senator Lathrop entered this body, there's no one that has showed me more respect. I hope that I have returned that respect to him. So it is with his guidance that I looked at this poll motion, realizing this was my only opportunity to move this bill forward. Now, I'm sure he's going to speak on it and explain more, and that should be what he has a chance to do as the committee chair. In 2020, Senator Geis used a poll motion on her abortion bill. It was her priority bill. It had received an early hearing, and the committee had time to review and make a decision on that bill. She had the same situation where the bill would have not had a chance had she not used the poll motion. It was her priority bill. It was a statewide issue, and she couldn't get it out of committee. I'm in no different situation with LB 773. I know no one likes poll motions, but if the rule book allows us to do it, and if it meets this criteria, then we should be allowed to use the poll motion to bring a bill to the floor. If not, then we should do away with the rule. So with that, I would ask your support for the poll motion on LB 773. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Brewer. Senator Lathrop, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, good afternoon. Thank you, Senator Brewer, for your kind words. And I, too, have a great deal of respect for Senator Brewer, and I've enjoyed a good relationship, working relationship, and a personal relationship with Senator Brewer. Nevertheless, I stand opposed to the motion. I will tell you, my view is that poll motions, while they may be provided for in the rules, circumvent the committee process. That's not an argument you haven't heard before, and I won't belabor the point. I know that when I served in the first 8 years, every time there was a poll motion, and they were infrequent, the chairs would pull together and recognize that poll motions represent a threat would be too hard or too strong, but they circumvent the committee process. And invariably, when we have poll motions, and I'm concerned that they become normalized, but when we have a poll motion, generally it's a bill that's going to come to the floor and take up a long time before we have a cloture vote. There is a reason these things are deadlocked in committee, and there is a reason that we respect the committee process, because when these things are pulled, what's the point in having a committee at that point, or a committee process? And while I hope that doesn't happen, what's to stop us from making it rain poll motions in this place? There are probably bills that you have. I think I might have one in banking and insurance that I'd like to pull that is not going to come out. They're a little more, they have a little different worldview over in the Banking and Insurance Committee on insurance matters than I do. But I don't. I don't, because I respect that committee process. And the reality is, after a poll motion, generally we see things come out here and not have the support necessary, because the committees oftentimes reflect the broader view of the body. And it is for those reasons. And I will respect Senator Brewer's request that we not debate the merits of the bill, which I will participate in should this motion prevail. But I would encourage you to oppose the motion to pull. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lathrop. Senator Morfeld, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I rise in opposition to the poll motion, and I just want to make a few different points. I too have a great deal of respect for Senator Brewer. We've disagreed on some things. We've come together on some things. That being said, the reason why I'm opposed to the poll motion is for a few different reasons. One, as somebody who has been on the Education Committee and the Judiciary Committee of the Legislature, which I believe both those committees combined, some sessions have 20 to 25% of all the bills. So we sit late into the evening listening to legislation and finding out who's opposed, who's in support, and then seeing if there's common ground or if there isn't moving forward. Poll motions, in my view, undermines the committee process and the process by which the committees go through their work and hear from the public. And I think I voted for a poll motion my first year or two in the legislature, and I'll be honest with you, I regretted it ever since. And I don't believe that I've ever voted for one since then. And I've tried to be as consistent as possible since then to respect the committee process. And, you know, I respect that there's some people that don't want to talk about the merits of this legislation, but I respectfully disagree, because I think that's tied to why it's still in committee and why it hasn't gotten out of committee, which goes to the poll motion. And the reason why there's problems with this bill is because Lincoln Police Department, the Lincoln Police Union are still opposed. I know that the Omaha Police Officers Association, and I believe the Omaha Police Department, was opposed. I know that there's an amendment coming that gets them, I believe, to neutral. But that being said, the amendment, as far as I can tell, and I've seen a draft of it, I don't know if it's changed, it has basically 20 criminal enhancements. So at a time when we're trying to reduce the prison population, we are getting rid of the requirement, the training requirement to be a concealed carry owner and the background check. And then we are putting in 20 additional enhancements that if you are carrying a concealed firearm at that time, you will then be subject to. So we are taking away the 8-hour training requirement, which as a concealed carry owner myself, I found the 8-hour training requirement to be one of the most meaningful parts of that requirement. So we're taking away the training requirement where we go through all the different laws and obligations of a concealed carry owner. And then we're actually increasing the penalties if you are concealed carrying a firearm at that time during the commission of a certain crime. Everything from having to identify yourself to a police officer if you're concealed carrying and beyond. And so that is my concern, is that the police department and the police union in my district, in my city, the second largest city in the state, still has severe concerns and is in opposition. 2, we are getting rid of the training and background requirement and potentially, more importantly, the training requirement, and then increasing significantly penalties against gun owners should they violate their obligations as a concealed carry owner after we've taken away the requirement that they be trained on those things. This is a dangerous bill in the sense that I think it will harm public safety. And I look to my police department and my police union to talk about that. And then 2, I think it's going to get otherwise the law-abiding gun owners caught up with very serious charges based on the compromise amendment, which the compromise amendment doesn't get all the opposition off, including my police department and my police union.
1 minute.
So that's why this bill has not gotten out of committee, colleagues. And I know people have been saying there's a compromise amendment out there, but it's not a compromise amendment for a lot of the people that were opposed, including other police departments. So I get that constitutional carry sounds good. It's a catchy name, but there are serious consequences, both for public safety, based on what I'm hearing from my police department and my police officers, and for the actual gun owners. Gun owners like myself who conceal carry, but won't have the training requirement that is critically important to ensuring that they know their obligations and the laws as somebody who carries. We are going to have law-abiding gun owners get caught up with serious crimes based on what I'm seeing from the compromise amendment. Now, I may not have the final draft of the compromise amendment. I wasn't invited to those meetings, and quite frankly, I don't blame anybody but for not inviting me. But in any case,
time, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Murfeld. Senator McKinney, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise opposed to LB 773. Interesting thing was when this bill was heard in committee, I was actually on the fence with it because the Omaha Police Department showed up and basically said they were in opposition of LB 773 because it would take away their option to target people in North Omaha and other communities in Omaha, which was problematic. But then an amendment was worked on that would allow the Omaha Police Department to still disproportionately discriminate against individuals in North Omaha. And that's something I'm strongly opposed to. But I also wanted to bring up an article that was released on Sunday that I had one of the pages hand out to all of y'all. And it's titled "Paying the Price, Well-Worn Path to Prison in North Omaha Fused Racial Incarceration Disparities." And I'm not going to read the whole article, but I'm going to highlight some things. First, a number of North Omaha neighborhoods produce some of the highest incarceration rates found anywhere in the country, according to the World Herald analysis of a Harvard University study. In 2010, a national spotlight of people behind bars, more than half a dozen North Omaha census tracts produced higher rates of male incarceration than any in South Central Los Angeles. Just think about that. South Central Los Angeles is a lot bigger than North Omaha by far. Overall, Nebraska locks up people of color at a far higher rate than the nation as a whole, and Nebraska's gaps between its low white incarceration rate and high rates of racial minorities are among the widest in the country. Keep going here. Nebraska grew its prison population more than any other state over the past decade, and that came as nearly all others saw declining inmate numbers drop, generally attributed to falling crime rates nationally, and many states re-examining of the get tough on crime policies of the 1980s and 90s, which massively increased incarceration. Nebraska still wants to be tough on crime, which is why LB 920 is still having a fight. And the rest of the state is changing, but we're not willing to. And we're wondering why we're having debates about a prison. A World Herald analysis of federal data as of December 31st, 2019, just before the start of the pandemic, showed Nebraska's Black incarceration rate was nearly 50% higher than the United States Black rate. Overall, that rate is 10th highest among states. Black people make up 5% of Nebraska's population, but about 27% of the state's inmates. The state's incarceration ranks for Hispanics is 11th, Native Americans is 7th, and Asians is 15th, also fall in the top tier nationally. And all of those stand in sharp contrast to Nebraska's incarceration rank for white people, 38. The combination of low white incarceration rate and high rates for people of color also creates some of the nation's greatest race-based incarceration disparities. Nebraska's Black incarceration rate is 9.5 times its rate for white people. It's the nation's 6th widest disparity. Only Wisconsin, Minnesota, New Jersey, Iowa, and Connecticut have bigger disparities, and a 10-to-1 disparity between Native Americans and white incarceration rates. Nebraska ranks only 2nd to Minnesota.
1 minute.
Notably, well, since I got a minute, I just hope that everyone in here reads this article and grasp it. We have to do better as a state. We have to make reforms. We have to pass LB 920 and hopefully my bill LB 980 and other reform bills to change the trajectory of our state. We cannot build our way out of this, and we can't continue to advocate for policies to allow police departments to disproportionately target Black communities. That's what we need to do. That should be a priority of our state. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator McKinney. Senator Hunt, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise with a concern about using a poll motion to subvert the committee process. There's a reason why we have built the committees in this body the way that we have, because we've built them with thoughtful legislators who have particular backgrounds and interests, who have experiences that lead them to be put on these different committees that they are in. Not only do I serve on committees, which helped put together the committees, I also serve as vice chair of the Urban Affairs Committee. And I think it's concerning to see a committee chair in this body try to subvert the activities of Senator Lathrop's committee. I respect our legislative process and the decisions of the Judiciary Committee members to keep this bill in committee during our short session. We don't have a lot of remaining days, and with many important challenges ahead of us, such as the budget, corrections, justice reform, the canal, a controversial abortion debate that we know is sure to come, same way this one is actually. I think that having a controversial gun debate brought on by this poll motion could derail the other work that we must do for Nebraskans this year. So for that reason, I respect the decision of the Judiciary Committee to keep the permitless concealed carry bill in committee for this session. My comments have nothing to do with the underlying bill. They have to do with the process. Senators, we have to trust the process here. We've had 609 bills introduced this year, and none of us have the ability to analyze all of those bills, including our staff. That's why they're referenced to committees. Is there a time that a poll motion would be in order? I think so. That would be a situation where you have a committee chairperson that simply refuses to bring something to a vote for a committee. But that's not what's happening here. I agree that this is a tool that we can use, but now is not the appropriate time to use this tool. Senator Groney made the same argument on his bill to hit the kids. Senator Geist made the same argument on her bill with the abortion ban, and we have the same argument happening now. But as Senator Lathrop pointed out, and as Senator Williams has pointed out in the past, this is a tool that we are able to use when the process does not work. And I don't see that that's what's happening right now. I'm not hearing that the process isn't working in this case. We aren't entitled, colleagues, to have our priority bills come to the floor. If I prioritized a controversial bill and the committee didn't want to vote it out, then that's it. That's on me. That's the process. The process isn't to then strong arm it out of committee with a poll motion. And I continue to be concerned by this increase of poll motions that we're seeing here in the legislature. To push for a poll motion when a committee has had issues, that to me is a red flag. When a bill is voted out of committee, that means that there's 7 or 8 people who have really dug deep and considered this legislation fully. What I'm hearing with LB 773 is that there's 8 members of the Judiciary Committee who couldn't come to an agreement, and because they couldn't come to an agreement or an understanding, now we're looking at a poll motion. And mind you, the poll motion might have 25 votes, but it doesn't have 33 votes. And there probably would be 33 votes for this bill if there was some kind of agreement in the committee. So what we're considering is now really working outside of that committee process, outside of the experts in the Judiciary Committee, and saying, you know what, you guys don't really know what you're doing, so as a body, we're going to pull this bill out. I've got plenty of bills, colleagues, that I would like to pull out of committees, but it sets a very dangerous precedent to say, all right, committees, you considered it, I don't agree with you, so I'm going to pull it, right? So I don't think that a pull motion is the appropriate move for the body at this time.
1 minute.
I won't speak to the merits of the bill, colleagues, because I don't know the merits of the bill. I don't have a committee statement. I don't know what's in a committee amendment here because we don't have one. I don't know what the committee would want because I haven't heard from them as a whole. We cannot pass legislation by just pulling bills from committee and subverting the entire committee process, which is a group of experts that we trust to weigh in on a topic, put forward an amendment if it's needed, and then more often than not, we do have the support to pass bills like this. So it doesn't work for me. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hunt. Senator Friesen, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I just basically wanted to touch a few points as a chair of a committee and my 8 years here and what I've seen happen. And pull motions are something that should not occur often. We should respect the committee process. But I think Senator Brewer has laid out a very good reason and numerous reasons of why this at times should happen. So in my first years here, I mean, we were told that pull motions, the committee chairs would all band together and automatically would vote no matter what, in order to what they called preserve the integrity of the committee process. But again, I will say that I have supported some pull motions in the past. I voted against some pull motions in the past. This one here for me will rise to the occasion that I think the people do expect us to debate this and to have a vote on this. And again, the committee process, I'd say it did work and it did get stuck there. We have had this happen in the past. I've had numerous bills stuck in committee and it's nothing unusual. But this is one of those issues that I feel personally, I guess, that rises to the level that the citizens want to see us discuss this, talk about it on the floor, and have a vote, because it is a constitutional right we're talking about. And so whether or not you support the bill or support the concept behind this, I am going to support the pull motion in this case. But I do want people down the road to think long and hard about the reasons for a pull motion and whether or not you should support something like that. I do think they should be few and far between. I think there needs to be a good set of reasons and the rationale behind this before we do pull motions. And so I want everybody to be, those that are going to be here longer than I am now, to think long and hard about doing a pull motion, because it is easier to, at times, reach some sort of compromise with the committee. But in some of those cases when you just can't reach a compromise, on those special occasions, I think the pull motion is appropriate. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Friesen. Senator McKinney, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'll continue, but I will say that, I do have a CCW permit. I'm just against allowing the Omaha Police Department to disproportionately arrest and discriminate against individuals in my community. But back to this article. Notably, as the prison population falls nationally, racial disparities are shrinking. Since 2006, the incarceration rates for Black and Hispanic people nationally are down more than 30%, roughly triple the reduction in white incarceration. Conversely, in Nebraska, the incarceration rates for both Black and white people have increased in that time. In fact, Nebraska is the only state to increase its Black incarceration rate since 2006. In that time, Nebraska's Black incarceration rate has gone slightly below the national average to well above it. Nebraska's Hispanic incarceration rate has fallen since 2006, though in that time, Nebraska has still shifted from having a below average Hispanic incarceration rate to above the national average. The Harvard researchers wanted to trace the impacts of where a child grows up on economic standing later in life. So using the census and tax records, they created a data set covering the 20.5 million Americans who were born between 1978 and 1983. The researchers looked at census tracts, those individuals grew up in and their later life outcomes, such as their own income and educational attainment. All that information was placed into an interactive data tool called the Opportunity Atlas. One of the metrics tools at the time used April 2010 for the census, when individuals in that cohort were in the late 20s or early 30s, how many were in jail or in prison. A dig into that data reveals that 4 Nebraska census tracts centered on 30th and Ames, 20% or more of the males who grew up in those census tracts were incarcerated, and those eye-popping figures represent only those incarcerated on the actual day of the 2010 census, not whether they were in jail or in prison before or since. Those North Omaha neighborhoods weren't the highest nationally. 8 census tracts produce over 30%. Still, of the nation's more than 73,000 census tracts, those 4 North Omaha census tracts all ranked in the top 250 in male incarceration rate, putting them in the top 4/10 of 1% nationally. 7 North Omaha tracts had incarceration rates of at least 16%, higher than Los Angeles, California. North Omaha, higher than Los Angeles, California. And the county attorney in Douglas County thinks he doesn't over-incarcerate Black people. There's many that stand up and say it's not a problem, but it's a problem that we must address, which is why we need to pass reforms and not build a prison, and not pass bills that allow law enforcement to disproportionately discriminate against Black people and people of color in this state. I don't know what else needs to be said or done to make people understand that this is a problem. What else needs to happen? We don't need any more reports, articles from the World Herald, studies from Harvard. Wake up and read and listen. Stop being so closed-minded. We have to change what we're doing in this state. And we're always talking about people leaving and attracting talent and retaining talent. How do you attract any Black person when they read this article? Please tell me, how do you? No Black
1
family
minute.
outside of Nebraska is going to read this article and say, I want to raise a family in North Omaha or in Nebraska, period. And we really need to think about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator McKinney. Senator Matt Hansen, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, colleagues. Colleagues, I won't belabor the point because I think we're getting close to a vote here. I do want to say that I do think poll motions should be fairly rare, should be rare. I've supported efforts in the past to try and raise the amount of votes from a poll motion because in my mind, they're should be rare and are often used on bills that are ultimately just going to face a filibuster and potentially fail on general file. I think about some of the filibusters and some of the bills we've pulled over the past, and I kind of wanted people to think about poll motions, and I understand people have already probably committed in this one, but if you think about poll motions going forward, think about the experiences that we've had with poll motions. Think about the multi-year fight we had about the corporal punishment student discipline bill that started with a 25-vote poll motion rather than trying to get any sort of consensus in the Education Committee. Think about how many hours this body lost because we couldn't come to the table and just there were repeated efforts to not come to the table. Maybe 773 is clear and there's no way to thread the needle in judiciary. I understand that. I understand that that's how Senator Brewer and others feel. But colleagues, when we look at poll motions, they should be rare. They should be rarer than they are. And just because you have 25 votes, to me, doesn't necessarily matter or shouldn't be the sole consideration in doing a poll motion. You probably should start considering if you have 33 votes. Because if you know a committee is that deadlocked, unless for some reason that committee is so unrepresentative of the body, you know you're probably in for some effort on the floor as well. I think about that just in terms of a lot of the issues that we've pulled out of committee over the years have led to very contentious and messy floor fights, in part because we're bypassing the process, that there's not a committee amendment to try and have the first shot at fixing the bill. There's not a committee statement to explain the process. There's all these other things you concede when you give a poll motion, knowing that you're also likely going to be facing very strong opposition. So I understand 773 probably commitments have been made and people know how they're voting on that. But going forward, when people try and encourage you to file a poll motion in the future, when people try and encourage you to vote for a poll motion in the future, please just kind of factor that in and weigh that in. You're kind of acknowledging that you're taking the first step in a messy process that is probably going to lead to a filibuster, and throughout recent history has usually led to a successful filibuster and the bill failing. I know there's been some exceptions to that, but that's a lot of the times where we're heading into, because a split committee, a 4-4 committee, is such a good indication that you do not have consensus in this body, even if you have a raw 25. So with that, Mr. President, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Matt Hansen. Senator Hunt, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wasn't planning to speak on this again, and this will be my last time, and maybe I'll have the last word because there's nobody else in the queue. Colleagues, I'm a little bit gobsmacked and shocked at how little conversation there is on this floor about the precedent we're setting for process here. I thought more of you cared about that, for real. Like, I know some of you just straight up don't, but like, I thought more than, you know, the 6 people or so who have spoken did. In the past, more of you have spoken about poll motions. Is the process, colleagues, going to be now going forward that if a bill has 25 votes for a poll motion, if I can round up 25 people to co-sponsor a bill, can I expect it to be polled? Is that normal now? The Geist abortion ban, Grony hitting the kids, Brewer's permitless concealed carry. All of these things were pulled out to the floor because they had 25 co-sponsors. Where does the legislative process stop and start? Why are we bothering with committees at all? Why are we bothering with committees at all? When we can pass bills instead with a popularity contest. I take my little bill from person to person and I say, this one is mean to trans people, this one's mean to women, this one makes stuff harder for Black people, this one makes it easier for people who are untrained to hold guns. Like, and you guys sign on to that and we get 25 and we can do whatever we want. That's what this process is teaching us. We go through great pains to get the right people in the right committees. The Judiciary Committee is full of attorneys, prosecutors, people who have experience in the courts, people who handle a quarter, somebody said a quarter of the bills that we get through this body, a huge chunk of them. They have more of a burden put on them as committee members than any of the rest of us on other committees have. Our Urban Affairs Committee ended hearings pretty early. Our Government Affairs Committee ended hearings pretty early because we didn't have all that many bills. The Judiciary Committee members are serious. They are multi-partisan. It is not a liberal or a conservative committee. I think it's a very moderate committee. And so there's no reason to play this political stuff to try to get bills out of that committee. If there's any committee to trust the process, I think it's the Judiciary Committee, especially because of the weight and the heaviness of the bills that they discuss in that committee, that they hear, that they vet, that they then have an executive committee session and, you know, sit down, hash out the bill, talk about opposition and proponents, come up with a committee amendment that is amenable to everybody. And then that's something that can come to the floor and get a majority of support because it's something that the committee members all stand behind. The committee members of Judiciary don't stand behind LB 773. And we've had a short little tiny queue of speakers today to talk about that. My philosophy here in the legislature is I might not get what I want. I get what I want like 3% of the time, honestly. But when something is happening that I believe damages the institution, that I believe sets a precedent that weakens democracy in this body, you can't make it easy for them. You can't make it easy to do that. You make it hard. You make them fight. You make next time they want to undermine democracy or the process or the institution, they go, oh, last time it was kind of a pain. I don't know if I want to do it again.
1 minute.
You don't let them walk away with it without saying anything. I'm not trying to talk on here 3 times. But it should not be this easy to take any bill and bypass the committee process that the people of Nebraska have put trust in us with. I think it's shameful, and I think that some of you who haven't spoken should also be ashamed. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hunt. Senator Vargas, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. I wasn't going to get up and speak. Part of the reason I'm going to get up and speak here on this is I care about process. I care about the intent. I know we have rules. Rules govern how we operate. This is in the rules. I think many people can make the statement that it's in the rules, so we should be able to do it. I don't necessarily think that that's what's up for debate, or whether or not you can do it. It's whether or not we should do it. Here's my example. And the person sitting in the president's desk right now, Senator Williams. I had a bill in my first couple of years in the Banking and Commerce and Insurance Committee. And it was a payday lending reform bill. Something I cared very deeply about. Something that I worked across the aisle on, actually, and had, in my estimation and our vote count, enough people that supported it on the floor. And it's not saying that being disparaging to Senator Brewer or in any way, shape, or form. I respect him. I respect the process. This is the process he wants to go, and I get it. There was a part of me that wanted to go down this route. I supported a poll motion when Senator Linehan did a poll motion for the 3rd grade reading. I get the intent. I think the reason why I didn't do it in that minute was, part of the reason is I really did look and defer to the committee chair and the expertise and the experience in this arena. And we worked for about 2.5, 3 years on that bill. And eventually it got out of committee in a place that I didn't initially intend for it to be, especially since there were significant opponents and proponents on both sides. And a lot of the conversations that I had with committee members was wanting to make sure that the process and both the product represented both all the ideals and perspectives across the state, both urban and rural, as much as possible. And it was a difficult conversation, the set of conversations we had. It's hard for me to stomach that, even though I knew I had enough votes on the floor to push something forward, maybe not enough votes necessarily to break a filibuster, that we're still working within the process as much as we possibly can. And we did eventually pass a bill that, after much deliberation, got to a place where it was better. And I didn't file a poll motion. I say that because some of you are listening on whether or not we should or should not, and the public's listening on it too. I heard Senator Friesen speak to sometimes there's moments where we need to because it warrants debate. But that perspective on whether or not warrants debate is left up to the perspective of all of us. It's whether or not we generally agree. But we do have the committee structure for that reason. Look, we have some really great experts on the Judiciary Committee from a lot of different walks of life, geographically distributed. We have many lawyers and individuals in that committee that have experience dealing with this. Whether or not you agree or disagree with the actual content of the bill, which has been brought up several times, there was opposition and support on this bill. Which leads me to believe that normally when that happens, especially with my own bills, there's more work that can be done. not necessarily saying it's wrong or right. That's kind of where I'm landing here, because I've been in this situation before. And I think we've all been in that situation in some way, shape, or form for something that we care about and love.
1 minute.
And I want to make sure that the process for the people that we put faith in, Democrat, Republican, Independent, doesn't matter who is in that seat or in the chair, and those members of the committee, just like I did when I worked with that committee in the banking and commerce and insurance, that we worked within it. It's something that when we uphold it as much as we can, it upholds more of the culture of what we do here. And I hope that's where we ultimately land. I really hope that maybe we could get a version that did work for most entities and parties. And I really respect the work that has been done. It's not that the work hasn't been done, but we're at this juncture where we decide whether or not it warrants pulling it out of committee. And I'm not there yet. So I do appreciate the work that has been done by the Colonel Brewer and others. It's not a black or white whether or not it hasn't been done. But when we're at this juncture, it means we have to make a decision on whether or not we're upholding more of the principles of the legislature, which will supersede many of us from here on in.
Time,
With that,
Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Vargas. Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, colleagues. I rise in opposition to motion to place Senator Brewer's LB 773 on general file. For many of the reasons that have already been stated about opposition, this circumvents the committee process, and the committee process exists for a reason. Senator Brewer started out his remarks, and I appreciate very much his remarks in opening the bill, but that this is part of the rules. And he's right. And what Senator Chambers say, he would say they're just a tool and he's going to use the tools in his toolbox. And so I don't begrudge Senator Brewer for using a tool that we have in our rules. I just don't agree with it. I've actually never agreed with the poll motion, and I have talked off the mic, out of session, about whether or not we should have it. And it's an interesting divide. People are kind of all over the map about whether or not we should allow poll motions. And for me, if we're going to allow poll motions, I think that the threshold should be raised, because if you're going to pull a bill out of committee, it should have at least enough support to withstand a filibuster. That's my personal opinion. I also would be fine with not having a poll motion at all, because the process exists for a reason. But I understand the argument that there are times where we need to have a poll motion, because what if 33 people in this body supported something and it was just stuck in a committee because the committee chairman wouldn't allow it out, or the committee was split, or what have you. So I get that. If there's that much support for a bill, then it should have the opportunity to have the floor debate. But having this low threshold, and maybe this will have 33 votes for the motion, I don't know. But having this low threshold for a poll motion, which is circumventing the committee process, to me is not reasonable. And that's not at all a judgment on Senator Brewer. He has as much to do with it as the rest of us. It's really a responsibility of us as the body to, at the start of session, really take a look at what the rules are that we are adopting and question them, and question if they're appropriate and if we should continue using them. Because since I've been here, there's been a lot of poll motions, and they are always for controversial things. And Senator Vargas was just talking about this. I don't know any bill that I could ever pass that I didn't have to work on a lot over multiple years, usually, to get it voted on the floor, voted out of committee. I don't think I've introduced and passed a single bill that didn't have amendments, even before I got it out of a committee, because that's what you have to do. You have to bring the different parties together and you have to work it out. And from what I can tell, there's a lot of things in this bill that haven't been worked out yet. And from what I am hearing, but won't know until it's filed, there's a lot of things being proposed that haven't been worked out at all. So I have a lot of concerns about this bill and this poll motion. And when this poll motion succeeds, as it probably will, I am going to have a lot more concerns about the underlying bill and potential amendments that I will be discussing. But for now, how much time do I have, Mr. President?
Minute 20.
Okay. I am going to share again, for those who missed it, because I missed it, the article that Senator McKinney passed out. Got to change my bifocals. Okay.
1 minute.
Thank you. I will start and I'm back in the queue. So paying the price, well-worn path to prison in North Omaha fuels racial incarceration disparities. Lavelle Brock would be the first to admit his own bad choices are largely the reason he's been imprisoned 3 times in Nebraska. The first at age 16 for a pair of drive-by shootings. But the recently released inmate also believes the path he ultimately took to prison was laid out before him long before he ever ran afoul of the law. He grew up amid multi-generational poverty and in a single-parent home in North Omaha. Even as a kid, he recognized how segregated Omaha's Black community was from the rest of the city, with few ready jobs, elevated levels of fractured families and school struggles, and a shortage of role models to inspire future success.
Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Michaela Cavanaugh. Senator John Cavanaugh, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I am going to vote against the pull motion. Those laughs are probably in surprise. But there's been a lot of good conversation. I just wanted to go on the record and make sure that it was clear. I'm still relatively new here. This is my second year in the legislature. I have not voted on a pull motion before, so I don't have some of the buyer's remorse and regrets that other people have. However, I've had a number of conversations about the procedures of the body and the necessity for these things. And I think a lot of people have covered this topic, that there is a rule provided for a pull motion. And so it does fit within the rules. And Senator Brewer did set out a set of criteria that he thinks cover why a pull motion is in order. I disagree with a lot of his analysis and characterization. Ultimately, the only thing in the rules is that any senator may move to place a bill on general file 20 days or more after the committee hearing, if the committee has not taken any final action, and that a vote of the majority of these elected members for said bill shall be placed on general file. And then it's got some other parts as well after that. But ultimately, it is just the pull motion is, I guess, a release valve for if the body as a whole finds that the work of a committee is not doing its job. And I'm not here to tell you one way or another what a scenario like that looks like, but what I would tell you about this particular bill is that it had a hearing, had testimony on both sides, and Senator Brewer, to his credit, has worked with those parties, a number of them who were opposed, and has made some amendments. There was an initial amendment placed on file, and then I have an amendment to that amendment. And then there's yet another, I think, substitution amendment on top of that, which contemplates the comments of some of the criticism. One of the reasons we have a committee structure here is that there are, well, this is bill number 773. I know we had bill number 1236, I think, was up today. That was, I don't know if we actually ended up getting to it, but that was a bill that we heard in General Affairs. But we have thousands of bills, and they cover a varied subject matter area that are then put into committees based off of the expertise and experience in that subject matter. And we put faith and trust into those committees to ask those pertinent questions, to address the concerned areas of law and conflicts and things along those lines based on that experience and repeated effort to see those issues. And if we do not like the outcome of the committee deliberative process, that is one thing where you disagree with about the outcome. Another is where you're saying they did something inappropriate or they didn't follow through with their duty. And the pull motion, in my estimation, would be not so much that we just disagree with the findings of the subject matter experts. The poll motion is intended as a tool in an emergency situation when there is clear that the committee is not doing its job. And in this, I don't think you could say that. There is not it is not demonstrated that the Judiciary Committee didn't give an effective and fair hearing. It is
1
not-
minute.
Thank you, Mr. President. There's no evidence that the committee didn't listen to the testimony, didn't hear all the issues, didn't see the substitute amendments and decide not to vote on those. This is not a case where it is appropriate to take this out of the hands of the standing committee that has the subject matter. And so whether you like it or not, or you agree with the outcome or not, I don't think this rises to that level of occasion. I'll talk about the subject matter of the bill if and when we come to a debate on the bill itself. But I would just say, unless a demonstrated or something, the other evidence is presented, I don't think a poll motion is in order at this time, and I'll be a no vote to pull this bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh, you're recognized.
Thank you. I'm just continuing to read the article. Quote, "The pillars that are necessary for a community to thrive are missing," Brock said. "I am a product of the struggle, and Brock's story is hardly unique. A number of North Omaha neighborhoods produce some of the highest incarceration rates found anywhere in the country, according to a World Herald analysis of Harvard University data. In 2010, a national snapshot of people behind bars, more than half a dozen North Omaha census tracts, produced higher rates of male incarceration than any in South Central Los Angeles." That is harrowing. Overall, Nebraska locks up people of color at far higher rates than the nation as a whole, and Nebraska's gaps between its low white incarceration rate and high rates for racial minorities are among the widest in the country. At a time of a national reckoning over race, such disparities have become hard to ignore, and they raise questions about whether Nebraska has done enough to address historical inequities and multi-generational poverty that some may say have helped create a birth-to-prison pipeline in North Omaha. If we continue down the same path that we are going down, how's this ever going to change? Said State Senator Terrell McKinney, who represents the heart of North Omaha in the legislature. McKinney said he's not surprised by Nebraska's high rates of Black incarceration. Each time the lawmaker steps behind the barbed fences and cold steel doors of a state prison, he inevitably runs into inmates he had grown up with in North Omaha, kids he wrestled with in a youth club, classmates from grade school, middle, and high school, former neighbors, cousins, and other relatives. Like poverty, North Omaha incarceration has become intergenerational. It's not uncommon to see 2 or even 3 generations of a family imprisoned. It's a normal occurrence for our Black males to be incarcerated, said LeVon Stennis-Williams of Reconnect, a North Omaha organization that helps former inmates re-enter society. There's nothing normal about that. The issues created by high levels of incarceration aren't confined within prison walls. The consequences often dog offenders for a lifetime, diminishing prospects for employment, further straining family ties, and sustaining a cycle of hopelessness. This has been decades in the making, said Willie Barney of the Empowerment Network, a North Omaha community betterment organization. But it does come down to lack of opportunity. Nebraska now has a historic opportunity to change the trajectory of a prison system that's not only among the nation's most racially unequal, but also America's most overcrowded and fastest growing too. Along with Governor Pete Ricketts' push to build a new $270 million prison, lawmakers have before them a range of proposals forwarded by a prison working group that seek to overhaul the state's criminal justice system in an effort to reduce recidivism and incarceration. Proposals to provide more programming and treatment for offenders and more support for them once they leave prison appear to have widened support. More contentious are provisions seeking to reduce penalties for some drug and nonviolent offenses. None of the policies from the state's prison working group seek to address the economic and social conditions that criminologists have long known to be at the root of crime and incarceration. But McKinney and fellow North Omaha Senator Justin Wayne are pushing a plan to put nearly half of the state's $1 billion in federal COVID-19 economic relief funds into a massive effort to economically transform North Omaha and South Omaha, the center of the city's Hispanic population. Wayne said those federal dollars whose spending guidelines place an emphasis on areas with high poverty and low incomes.
1 minute.
Provide a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to create jobs, build new affordable housing, and invest in Omaha communities that have long been neglected. Among those backing the plan are Omaha Police Chief Todd Schmatter, who says such front-end investments would prevent crime and incarceration. I'd rather have 1,000 jobs strategically placed in the right part of our city to affect poverty, Schmatter told lawmakers last month. That would reduce violent crime far more than 1,000 more police officers. Nebraska grew its prison population more than any other state over the past decade, and that came as nearly all others saw declining inmate numbers, drops generally attributed to falling crime rates nationally, and many states re-examining the tough-on-crime policies of the 80s and 90s, which massively increased incarceration. Some who defend Nebraska's growing use of imprisonment point out the state still has a below-average incarceration rate, but that's only really true if you're
Time,
white.
Senator. Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Senator Hunt, you're recognized, and this is your third opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I'm just asking you to stand up for the authority of our committee process and say, no, this is not how we're going to do this. If you want to bill out, you need to work with the committee. And if you fail, you can do what I do and always just try again. Just try again. It's a shame to normalize lawmaking through poll motions, flouting the committee process. Your vote on this motion will not indicate your views on the underlying bill, but on the erosion of the democratic process here in the unicameral. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hunt. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh, you're recognized, and this is your third opportunity.
Thank you. Nebraska now incarcerates Black, Hispanic, and Native American people at rates well above the U.S. rates for those population groups. A World Herald analysis of federal data as of December 31, 2019, just before the start of the pandemic, showed Nebraska's Black prison incarceration rate as nearly 50% higher than the U.S. Black rate. Overall, the rate is 10th highest among the states. Black people make up about 5% of Nebraska's population, about 27% of the state's inmates. The state's incarceration ranks for Hispanic 11th, Native American 17th, and Asian people 15th. Also fall in the top tier nationally. And all of those stand in sharp contrast to Nebraska's incarceration of white people, rank for white people 38th. The combination of Nebraska's low white incarceration rate and high rates for people of color also creates some of the nation's greatest race-based incarceration disparities. Nebraska's Black incarceration rate is 9.5 times its rate for white people. It's the nation's sixth widest disparity. Only Wisconsin, Minnesota, New Jersey, Iowa, and Connecticut have bigger disparities. And with a 10-to-1 disparity between Native American and white incarceration rates, Nebraska ranks second only to Minnesota. Notably, sorry, I think I lost my place. Going in the wrong direction. I think I've lost my place, so how much time do I have left?
3:20.
Thank you. I know Senator McKinney already read this article. I thought it was worth reading again and probably will be worth reading more times. This article talks about something that former members of this body have been talking about for a very long time. There was an intergenerational poverty task force put together here in the Nebraska Legislature when Senator Heath Mello and Senator Kathy Campbell were here because they co-chaired or chaired and vice chaired the task force. And there is a study, and if you want to go look at the reports are available online, and I will happily send it out to the body. But it is where all of the reports are held online, and I highly recommend you go check it out because you'll find some other really fascinating information in other reports. But that report outlines how to address intergenerational poverty in Nebraska. And there are so many things in that report that have never happened here in Nebraska. This year just feels like spaghetti being thrown at a wall. What is the purpose? What are we trying to do? What are we trying to achieve? What are we trying to accomplish? Are we trying to make Nebraska the most incarcerated state in the nation, or are we trying to make Nebraska the best place to live no matter who you are? Black, Native American, Hispanic, Asian American, or white? LGBTQ, cisgender normative, binary, transgendered. Who are we trying to make this the best place for? Because in reading this article and seeing the bills that this body deems important and the bills that this body deems so unimportant that you need to lecture me about your own words, this body thinks that this place, this state, this building, this everything is for white men.
1 minute.
I am not opposed to guns. I don't mind guns. I just think that we need to be sensible about them because I don't want my children to be shot at school. I know that might seem like an irrational standpoint to take, like I'm not American or something, but that's how I feel. I want schools to be safe, and I want us to have reasonable and strategic gun laws. And I will talk about that when the bill comes to the floor. I look at what we have before us in this legislature, and there is so much more we could be doing to improve the lives of every Nebraskan, not just the white men. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Senator Slama, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good evening, colleagues. I will be very brief in my comments. I do support the motion to pull the bill from committee as a member of the Judiciary Committee. While I respect that the Judiciary Committee is made up of lawyers, former lawyers, aspiring lawyers like myself, we have Rule 3, Section 20B for a reason, and I think we're having a very good substantive conversation about this, but I would like to take a moment because certain members who do like to point out when other members of the body are not in attendance, we do have a number of senators who have checked out, so including a few who are running for higher office. So I'd like to take a moment to recognize that and thank you, whether or not you're in support or in opposition of the poll motion, to thank you for just being on the floor and being here and not checked out like a number of people in this body are. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Slama. Senator Erdman, you're recognized.
Question.
There's no one left in the queue. No one left in the queue. Senator Brewer, you are recognized to close on your motion to place LB 773 on general file.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think we probably endured enough torture here today. I'm not going to go back and go one by one through those who spoke against it. Some seem to have lost focus on the fact that we're voting on a poll motion, not the bill. We'll have a chance on Thursday, the whole day, to discuss the merits of the bill. But the poll motion, again, there is not a bill that comes before this body that has more interest by the people of Nebraska. There's a lot of things we debate here, but if we take and look at what should be important and what isn't, I can't help but want to go to the Constitution. Now, some of you guys hate that document, but I think maybe if you read it a little more, you might appreciate it. But if we take a look at the Constitution of the state of Nebraska, we've got religious freedom, we got due process, we got slavery being prohibited. But the very first, this is not the U.S. Constitution where it's the Second Amendment. In the Nebraska Constitution, it is in the first statement of rights. All persons are by nature free and independent and have certain inherited and inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and the right to keep and bear arms for security or defense of self, family, home, and others, and for the lawful common defense, hunting, recreational use, and all other lawful purposes, and such rights shall not be denied or infringed by the state. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Brewer. There's been a request to place the House under call. The question is, shall the House go under call? All those in favor, vote aye. Those opposed, vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
36 ayes, 2 nays to place the House under call.
The House is under call. Senators, please record your presence. Those unexcused senators outside the chamber, please return to the chamber and record your presence. All unauthorized personnel, please leave the floor. The House is under call. Senator Morfeld, please check in. There's been a request for a roll call vote in regular order. Again, members, the vote is on the motion to place LB 773 on general file. Mr. Clerk.
Sir Aguilar, Sir Albright, voting yes, Sir Arch, voting yes, Sir Blood, Sir Bostar, voting no, Sir Bostelman, voting yes, Sir Brandt, voting yes, Sir Brewer, voting yes, Sir Breesy, voting yes, Sir John Kavanaugh, voting no, Sir Michaela Kavanaugh, voting no, Sir Clements, voting yes, Sir Day, voting no, Sir DeBoer, Sir Dorn, voting yes, Sir Erdman, voting yes, Sir Flood, voting yes, Sir Friesen, voting yes, Sir Geist, voting yes, Sir Gregor, voting yes, Sir Holleran, voting yes, Sir Ben Hansen, voting yes, Sir Matt Hansen, voting no, Sir Hilgers, voting yes, Sir Hickelman, voting yes, Sir Hughes, voting yes, Sir Hunt, voting no, Sir Jacobson, voting yes, Sir Coulterman, voting yes, Sir Lathrop, voting no, Sir Lindstrom, voting yes, Sir Linehan, voting yes, Sir Lowe, voting yes, Sir McAllister, Sir McDonald, voting yes, Sir McKinney, voting no, Sir Morfeld, voting no, Sir Moser, voting yes, Sir Merman, voting yes, Sir Pauls, voting yes, Sir Pansy Brooks, Sir Sanders, voting yes, Sir Slama, voting yes, Sir Stinner, Sir Vargas, voting no, Sir Walls, voting no, Sir Wayne, Sir Williams, voting yes, Sir Wishart, voting no. 30 ayes, 11 nays on the motion to place the bill on general file.
The motion is adopted. Mr. Clerk, raise a call.
I have one item, Mr. President. That is to print an amendment to legislative bill LB 917. Senator Linehan would like to add her name to 933 as co-introducer. And Senator Pauls would move to adjourn the body until Wednesday morning at 9:00 a.m.
Members, you've heard the motion to adjourn until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.